right, welcome back everybody to the Biblical Hitman. I'm your host Steven. I'm here with Jesse. Unfortunately, Taylor is not going to be here joining us today, but joining us for the first time is David Lee Corbo, aka the Raven, and also with him Top Lobster, the father of disinformation. They are the gentlemen who have the podcast, the Nephilim Death Squad, and it is a pleasure having them on. We're going to get into a bunch of different kinds of conversations this show. And but before we get into all of that, please, if you haven't done so, if you're new, if it's your first time here and you want to support the show, hit that subscribe button, like the show, share it with your friends, leave a comment down below. It definitely helps the show grow, helps put us out there in the algorithms, and it just helps us connect with you guys. And so we enjoy that. We enjoy that a lot. So, but gentlemen, thank you for coming on to the show.
Thank you for having us, man.
Yeah.
Thanks for being here.
Thanks for coming on my show. You know, we were we're ready to go live. We're gonna for the people not in the know, I messed up again. Gave myself way more work, but I'm glad to be here with you guys. This is a lot of fun. Jesse, really nice. You're part of Blurry Creatures, or is this just your camera?
Zinger. Oh my goodness.
Oh man, I wish
I
had a little drum, a little sound in the back. That would have been perfect. But yeah, guys, thank you for coming on in the show. We get into all of the things here. We really filter everything through a biblical lens. That's our background. That's our stance with things. We're dogmatic on
our lawyers. Our lawyers will be talking to you shortly after the show.
Right. We're dogmatic on a few things, but we like to have people on that have different perspectives, different ideas of theology and interpretations. And we get into the cryptids, we get into the UFOs, we get into the current events, and we really try to do everything and not get kicked off of social medias. If that makes any sense.
I'm really not liking this vibe. I'm sorry to interrupt again. I feel like they're doing this on purpose. You see this thing, David, at the top there, like, Steven there has the mustache. He's doing it better than you. He's got glasses, which make more sense than you. Then at the bottom, we have Jesse.
His mustache is nice, dude.
I'm squinting. He has a better beard than I do. And I feel like they're doing this on purpose. They're like, we look at you through the biblical lens. And then they put us right next to...
We planned it. We did. We planned it that way.
Before we started this show, Steven said, what did you call your... He said, look at the... This is what he did. He leaned into the camera and he said, hey, look at the stealth bomber. Which is, there's nothing more aggressive and dominant than looking another man in the eyes, stroking your mustache, and then calling your mustache a weapon of war straight to my face. So yeah, I do feel like there's some sort of like jockeying for position happening.
Yeah. Well, we firemen, man, we're very prideful over our stash.
It's a banger. It's a banger. As a mustache appreciator, I have delved deep into the art of the mustache myself. I recognize game when I see it. It's a banger of a mustache.
So fireman in Florida, it's interesting that leads to my almost my origin story of how I became. I know. Follow me here, people. Follow me. I used to live in New York City. And I took the firefighter test, but before that, I actually have I have a bachelor's degree in fire protection and management. Whatever.
Why did I not know this about you?
I have a minor in music, but I don't know. Well, I'm telling you now. That's what I don't use it at all. Have never used this degree, but there was a point in my life where I was obsessed with firefighting. I loved it. I got like a 98 on the public test. I took the physical test, and I was like ripped in shape. In New York City, the competition is very high. There was like 75,000 people. Yeah. But I was right there. And I took the physical test. I passed it. I was like one of the top. And then they were going to make the class to do I guess it was like a couple month, like a boot camp sort of thing before you get in. And they decided right before it went on, like they called me. I had a number. And they were just like, we decided that the test that you took, the multiple choice one, was against Spanish people and black people. I'm 100% Puerto Rican. I was like, I got a 98 on this thing. I was like, but they were like, oh, well, it was kind of tricky. And I was like, well, these guys just didn't know how to read. And from there, I started thinking, I was like, what's going on here? Like, I've done everything right, and now I'm being excluded because of like some kind of racial. And it just really drove me down the pathway of, I was like, let me explore race realism. And like, that was fun. And then eventually you get into conspiracy stuff, which I guess is not a far cry from race realism, but that's like part of my origin story where I should have been a firefighter. I was literally in it. And it just turned out that,
That's such a fall from grace, dude. like you were supposed to be a firefighter and now you're a podcaster. Nothing is more insulting than the firefighter to podcaster pipeline. When I was younger, I was
literally this is Steve.
This is insane. I can't believe that is what I didn't even know. No wonder you've never told me. It's embarrassing. When I was younger,
that's awesome.
I was homeless, and then now I'm not homeless, and now I'm a podcaster, and that's at least a notch, an increase. It's one step above, homeless person, vagrant. But to have been in the running, 75,000 applicants to be a firefighter, Top Lobs is right there. And he goes, you know what? I think I'm going to put some slurs on some t-shirts and sell them. That's a wild segue. Unbelievable.
I could have done anything. And I ended up
could have done anything.
But even before this, what's more embarrassing, I ended up working on the goddamn railroads, like overnight, like a criminal. Yeah, I don't know what's wrong with me. Yeah.
That's right. That's tough work there. My goodness.
It's I guess like I wanted to do something real dangerous. I like the appeal of firefighting, and that's what drew me towards it. And that fell through. And then I decided the next most dangerous thing is working on the track. So I worked for the MTA for like 7 years, and I built the railroads underground, and then eventually moved overground. And then I drove a tractor trailer for them, which is also like the second most dangerous. I like doing dangerous shit. Now I sit in front of a computer.
Doesn't it sound like he's making it up? It just sounds like he's lying.
Yeah.
Keep going.
Pathological liar, right?
Pathological liar.
Let me tell you about when I killed the president of the United States.
It
was 1963.
Oh man,
that is awesome. Well, I'll ask this: what brought you guys together? I mean, how did you guys? How did the Nephilim Death Squad, come to be?
Long story or short story?
Let's go short story.
David's.
Okay.
That's not even a lie.
So you guys met at a urinal. You're just doing your thing, and you.
Now he wants a long story. So more or less, the way it happened is I had been creating conspiracy content for a little bit. I had a show called The Ravens Watch, and it was just me, sort of doing what we do, just not as effective. And I ended up, Top got on my radar one way or another. I think it's because we were both mutual fans of Tony Merkel's The Confessionals, and he's got an app, members app. So we ended up kind of bumping into each other on that. And I said, I kind of like this guy. Let me see what else he's about. And I went on Twitter and I found just despicable behavior, obtuse tweets, really inflammatory, things that you would never, anybody would pull back and recoil if they saw anyone saying these things anywhere, let alone, on a public platform. And so I said, this is maybe somebody that I want to get to know a little bit more. And I reached out to him, and we kind of shot the shit back and forth. And what I'll say to Top's credit is, you guys know what it's like, right? You start a podcast, and in the beginning, it's very hard to get people to listen to it. So we have a conversation on Twitter, he and I, and he goes, oh, you make conspiracy podcasts. Tell you what, I'll listen to it. Which is like, number one, to voluntarily listen to somebody's podcast is like, usually that's only done under, threat of death or something like that. And so he volunteers to do it. And I go, yeah, whatever you say, dude. Comes back like 2 days later. He goes, hey, I listened to it. It was pretty good. Would you like to make some content together? And eventually that just snowballs into, Nephilim Death Squad. So I don't know what kind of maniac is in the, top 1% of firefighters in New York City who then goes and builds all the railroads under the ground in New York City, and then voluntarily listens to a bad podcast. I mean, that's like,
well, that's
should be
not
studied.
Really. Tell them how you got the co-host job.
Well, I got the co-host job because I found that my newfound friend was the host of a very offensive podcast called Tower Gang. And I said, let me check this out. And I go into Tower Gang's live chat while they're streaming, and I go, this is a disgusting show. So I start showing up every time that it airs, and I'm talking in the chat
today
and these
at 9/11 Wednesday.
Every Wednesday at 9/11, baby. And one day I say to myself, you know what this show needs? And this is very sneaky on my behalf, but I go, this show should have their fans submit pictures of for their sort of broken co-host. They have like a co-host that's like on the spectrum. Something's wrong with him. And I go, that guy should be the guy who judges the people, by the way, that come in. They're tickled by this. They read the chat. They go, ha, we should let Toad is his name fittingly. We should let Toad judge submissions because that is very funny. And then here's my in. I go, here's my Toad. And long story short, I end up winning what was then dubbed as a competition. I was the recipient of a fine T-shirt designed by Top Lobster. He was forced to draw my piece. And then after, I guess, a gander at that and, you know, the previous conversations we had engaged in, he goes, I'd like you to be my co-host. He actually proposed on one knee when he handed me the T-shirt. And yeah, that's legitimately how the show got started.
So literally the short version was the real version.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it wasn't even remotely, there was no jokes in that.
Oh.
That was a real story.
The truth is,
Oh, wow.
the truth is that I was like, we were about to start the show together anyway, and I begged him. I was like, don't send your because if like I don't have to initially see it, but since he won, the deal was that I have to draw I have to draw it creatively and put it on a T-shirt for the winner, whoever wins. Yeah. And I was like, shit, he won. Like it was like there was a lot of submissions, maybe 6 people, and they kept voting him through. Like it wasn't really up to me, but like my co-hosts were like, no, he got it. This is the best one this weekend.
And the tradition carries on, by the way. At the last Bohemian Grove, we crowned the new king of who tastefully put his in a hot dog bun and covered it in mustard. And so, you know, as far as presentation goes, nailed it. Really nailed it. And so, yeah, I was happy. Reluctant a little bit. It's bittersweet to pass the crown, but it no longer lies with me.
After all that, we decided, like, we looked at each other and I said, hey, do you want to do a show about, like, you know, biblical conspiracy? We look at things through the biblical lens. And he said, yes, absolutely. And then we just decided to do that.
Which is more or less to say, hey, do you want to disappoint God, like, at a really high level regularly? And I was like, yeah, it sounds right up my alley, dude, 100%. So we're constantly seeking God, and God is constantly, I think, probably hiding from us. He's hiding from us at this point. He's like, dude, no, please, you got to stay away.
Oh man, no, I mean, you guys put up some awesome content, man. I mean, the conspiracy stuff, that's like our realm. I mean, me and Jesse, we've been talking about this stuff. I mean, we kind of tied back together. I've known him since birth, but we kind of separated for what? I mean, 15 years?
12
years or something like that.
Somewhere around there.
And I decided to take just a trip to Vegas one day and go see him. And man, I was that almost 8 years ago now. And ever since then, man, we've just been, you know, that's all we talk about.
Had a couple drinks and just went to town for like 6 hours straight. By the time, you know, the sun came up, we're talking about the Aztecs and the Mayans, and the world should have ended in 2012.
Exactly.
Time,
and I think that was shortly after we were UFO hunting, and we actually saw one. It was kind of mind blowing.
Out in Nevada.
Calico Basin, yeah, man.
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of crazy stuff out there.
I used to live in Las Vegas. It is a weird place. I often say, because I've lived also like kind of in the woods, you know, like in a town that was mostly forest and was really isolated. And
where was this?
So where I lived in the isolated forest town, that was in New Jersey.
Okay.
And then, you know, of course, it's deserts in Nevada, but there's a certain spookiness when you look out into the woods at night that, like, you know, feels creepy. It's a little bit more than like bears and stuff. But if you look into the desert at night, it's a very ominous feeling. Like, I get the impression, I remember when I was out there, and I wasn't even necessarily, I wouldn't have called myself a Christian at the time, but I would say, like, it feels like the devil lives out here. You know, whatever cryptids and creatures exist in the forests are one thing, but whatever creatures and cryptids exist in the desert is a totally different thing.
It's a different feeling, you know. It's like you look out. I love camping out in the middle of the desert. I've been doing it for years, going down to the river, camping out. We go shooting out over towards Searchlight, south of Vegas, and you get to these spots in the desert, and you can just see for miles.
Yeah.
And sometimes the moonlight hits the desert floor. It's incredible. But, yeah, it's a completely different vibe. And, we've had some creepy moments out here in the desert, that's for sure.
Yeah. When we were going up to Calico Basin, this is where we saw the UFO, just like on top of a peak of that Calico mountain range, whatever. It's in the Red Rock Canyon. But we're walking up. We walk about maybe, 400, 500 feet. We're going uphill, and then all of a sudden we hit a plateau, and there's just a big pentagram laid out, but it's created by rocks. Like they put little tiny boulders around. They made a huge pentagram. We were like, oh.
It actually wasn't a pentagram. It's called the Witch's Circle. It's two
okay.
spirals.
That's what it was. Yeah.
It's two spirals that run into each other, and they just removed it. But there was a picture online at one point where there was a whole bunch of people standing in a circle holding hands with white cloaks on, cloaked hooded cloaks.
Wow. At
And,
that
and
exact location?
that exact circle specifically. So they used that circle right there for whatever ritual practice, and they used it for years because it had been there since like before I moved here in 2007. So I was told about it, but just recently, I think during or after, they just removed it out of nowhere. Somebody removed it.
That's
Is that
interesting
like,
because
Is that like two squares that are like slightly off? Because it's not quite the star. It's more points to it. That's what you're saying?
The circle.
Yeah.
The-
And
no, I
like
think he
the
described it as
formation?
like interlocking spirals.
Yes, it's exactly interlocking spirals that just kind of, and people would walk in it and put money in the center of it, but I don't think people realize it's probably for something wicked,
Yeah.
some satanic ritual.
Oh,
Yeah.
there you go.
is it?
Oh.
Is it which one of them?
Okay.
No, I don't think it would be one of those.
Wow. The one top right is
Yeah.
Yeah,
closest.
that's
for
the closest
sure.
one. Yeah.
That's what I thought.
Wild.
That is that's Solomon's seal. This is where like it
Oh,
eventually
dude.
turns into the seal of David or the star of Remphan. But that was Solomon's seal that he would use on his temple. And I mean, there's
That's
a lot
for,
of like
entrapping entities to do your
if
bidding
you
kind of a deal.
Yeah.
if you believe in the Kabbalistic teachings of his story, that's what they'll tell you, that he enslaved demons to do his handiwork back there. That's what I was
But
wondering.
certainly that, whether or not you believe it is one thing. I mean, that's certainly the intention of it. When you have this geometry enclosed in a circle, it's meant to summon a thing and then keep it entrapped within that circle. These places, the woods, the desert, right? I mean, you have Aleister Crowley, right? He's doing the Amalantra workings. He's on this little wooded island in the middle of the Hudson in a cabin for all these days. He eventually communes with Lamb. And then Jack Parsons and what's this guy's name from Scientology?
L. Ron Hubbard.
L. Ron
Ron
Hubbard.
Hubbard,
They're
yeah.
in the deserts of New Mexico, and they're trying to finish. I think it was the Amalantra workings or the Babylon's workings, whatever the hell it was, and they're trying to summon in the Moonchild. These places, these like really isolated places, are. I don't know if it's like thin spots. Like it goes back to the idea of in the Bible Jesus walking through the desert and being tempted constantly by Satan. Like I don't even think. We have a friend named Faceless, and we don't know what he looks like.
He's faceless.
He's faceless. He wears like a green ski mask, and he makes really awesome merchandise. Shout out to Low Level Perpetrators. And he had a fascinating story. He came on our show once. He lived out in California, but you're talking east. So the more east you go, the more desert it becomes. That kind of seems like where he grew up. And he tells a story about him and his friends. They used to explore these tunnels, these underground. I think there were irrigation systems. They're just meant for runoff because the desert doesn't hold water. The ground is so hard, flash floods happen. So they make these runoff irrigation tunnels. And him and his buddies are exploring them one day. And they're walking deep into this tunnel, talking, laughing. And eventually, I think they hear a noise. And all their friends get freaked out. And they start talking about heading back, but Faceless friend I think ends up hurting himself. So the way the story goes is there's a noise that's loud enough for most of his homies to run away, but Faceless is just
They were also down there like just setting off fireworks, like
Which is
a bunch
crazy.
of retards. Yeah,
because
in the tunnel.
it's like you're in an enclosed concrete tunnel and you're just blowing fireworks off.
Oh, geez.
So they hear a noise. Most of the homies run, but Faceless sticks back to help his buddy who is just not capable of doing. He's just not an athletic
He, like,
kid. Whatever the
twisted his
case
ankle
is.
or something.
I think he twisted his ankle, right? And something happens where suddenly his friend starts screaming and says something is burning him, and basically like something touched him on the shoulder and caused like a great deal of pain. So they're stopping and they're trying to address this. And next thing you know, they look down at the tunnel where they just were, and something just kind of
Yeah,
peeks out at them. And he describes it as this long, gangly, pale, genitalia-less, like it's got no reproductive organs, very gaunt, but very tall and lanky, all white.
Very similar to the alien at the end of Alien Romulus, pretty much.
I've never seen Romulus.
You've never
That's the new
seen
one
it?
that came out, right?
They throw little like Nephilim little creatures in there all the time.
I find that the
feel like.
Alien series does that pretty well. Like Promethean or whatever, Prometheus was part of the whole Alien series. I think
Yeah.
they touched on some really fascinating stuff in that film. But they end up trying to take off, and Faceless is dragging this guy, like dragging him by his neck, because he just can't get the wherewithal to run. And eventually they make it out, and they hop in the car with their buddies, and they haven't even had time to talk to one another. What did you see? What did I see? They just saw something and reacted. They took off. They bolted. So they're in the car, and they're trying to explain why they're screaming, go, go, go. It's time to get out of here. It's time to go. And as Faceless starts to, that's when I showed him that, I said, did it look like this? And he almost shit brick.
That is creepy, bro.
Yeah, he almost shit brick.
I'm out. I'm running out of my shoes, bro.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he starts trying to explain to his other buddies in the car what he saw. And as he starts describing it, the other dude starts finishing his sentences. It looked like this. And then the guy goes, yeah, and it had arms like this. And then he goes back and yeah, but it didn't have any, yeah, and it looked like it was too tall to fit in the, and they're just going back and forth. The more that they start reaffirming each other, the worse that feeling of dread becomes. Because I don't know if it's like a defense mechanism in the human mind that will allow you to ignore an experience you just had, as long as you don't look too deeply at it. But when you start rehashing that experience and your buddy starts affirming it, now you can't even pretend that you didn't see what you thought you saw. Yeah. Maybe you saw something else. So
it becomes like more objective.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the rest of the ride home becomes not pleasant, right?
Yeah.
So he gets dropped off, and his buddy gets dropped off, and it just is what it is. And the next morning, Faceless is up in his kitchen, and he's going to do the dishes, and he's looking through his back windows, and he sees that there is like some debris on his property. And eventually when he's done, he goes to address it. He finds his family dog twisted and torn in two. Like as if something grabbed it, picked it up, twisted it, chucked one half over there, chucked another half over there.
Like a Chinese guy in one of those lathes,
Like a Chinese dude with industrial machinery. Yeah.
Was it like a big dog?
It was a decent sized dog.
I think it was like a what do you call it? It's like a small poodle, not a big poodle, but like a.
It was like a medium sized dog. So it would have been probably something closer to like a. You think of like pit bulls and German shepherds as full size dogs. It's not a toy breed. It's something in the middle. You know, and
like a 20-pound dog-ish.
Yeah, something like that. Maybe even a little bit big. I mean, he made it sound like it was a decent sized dog. His other dog is a pit bull. So his other dog is still inside the fence. And this thing is out of the fence. And he starts going through his mind. He's like, what's going on here? You have coyotes in this area, sure. But coyotes aren't going to try to take on a dog. They're certainly not going to go in the enclosure where there's a big pit bull and try to take. They're smarter than that. And they're not going to twist a dog in half, chuck its rear quarters that way and its front legs that way, and then leave the kill. They're not going to do that. So his father and him, they're both really confused. They're trying to rationalize this. Must have been coyotes. Long story short, one day, years down the line, after that event is long and gone, he's at a party and there's a clairvoyant there, like a psychic. And one of his buddies is like, yo.
Don't skip the part. I mean, he also went back a couple days later with his friends, and they went back to the same spot where they were blowing off those fireworks. And this is what he describes like, I don't know, I remember exactly what he said, but like satanic symbols,
yes,
like what are those called? The pentagrams and shit like that. And they were like, how come this wasn't here? Like we didn't see this when we were here last time, but it's there. It's written on the walls, it's on the floors and stuff. And they were like, let's just get the fuck out of here. But so go ahead, finish that story.
He ends up talking to this clairvoyant, and one thing leads to another. He starts saying like, you lost somebody recently, right? And he's thinking about his dog, and the guy basically says like, you saw something that you shouldn't have seen. And so he makes a bunch of illusions, like he knows what this guy's been through, and he tells him that he's being protected for whatever reason from this thing, but that he did in fact have a hitchhiker follow him home, and that his buddy does not have the same protection. So Faceless, I believe, was raised Christian or Catholic, and he is like a God-fearing guy. Even if you saw him, you wouldn't think so. You'd be like, this guy's an absolute maniac. But despite his visage, he does believe in God. And so he suspects that that was the nature of the help and that it couldn't get him. So it took something close to him, is what the clairvoyant said. So in other words, this thing followed you home, couldn't get you because you were protected, took your dog instead. His buddy, not so lucky. Whatever this thing is doing to him seems to have attached himself to his buddy, and that guy with the bad ankle that was getting dragged down his life has just spiraled into drug addiction, abuse. He's stealing. He's in and out of jail. He's getting beat up by people. He lives like a vagrant. And Faceless thinks it's because he's got this thing looming over him, this sort of parasitic entity. But that story, the reason that I told it is because that kind of stuff, like, you hear a lot of that. I know Joshua Tree is out in California, and that's kind of
about to bring that up
on the cusp of the desert there. And I think a lot of weirdness happens out in the desert. And when we're talking about sigils and pentagrams and such, I think a bunch of idiots are going out there, would-be occultists, and maybe, who knows, maybe they're a higher level than you would think, but they're trying to do things like that. They're bringing these entities in. They're trying to corral them. They're trying to entrap them. They're trying to have them do their bidding. But all that and more, I think, is happening out in the deserts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
100%.
Well, the manuals are out there. I mean, we have all these famous occultists. They've written books. I mean, even these entities have written books for them. That's what they claim. And
Yeah.
I think, I mean, what do you guys think these cryptids are? What's their nature? Are they a physical dimensional being, or are they an interdimensional being? I mean, what's your thoughts on all that?
I think they range anywhere from interdimensional to I think the interdimensional can be physical as well, but their nature would be another question. You have some people that will report stories of a Bigfoot that the Bigfoot called himself, what's the term?
So that was actually from the Bump podcast with Bo.
Right.
I think his name is.
Eliud.
Right.
Eliud, yeah. That's that's the sons of the children of the Nephilim, which is crazy.
Right. So
Becomes
that would
pretty
mean a
problematic.
Nephilim, that's like a Nephilim descendant type. And then there is also the proclivity for these things to show up around government bases.
Mm-hmm.
And what the government is doing, God only knows, some sort of genetic experimentation. So would that be considered a Nephilim? I mean, I guess it would have its like some sort of DNA from some ancient bloodline, I would assume, when they're doing these experiments and then releasing them, or they're accidentally escaping. So I would say, yeah, Nephilim in general, but their origins are anywhere from created in a lab to created by, which that also might be created in a lab, which I kind of want to bring this post up. This is, you guys said you talk about some current events.
Yeah.
This is something that I've been thinking about for a long time. So when Trump was running, he said that he wanted to make IVF more accessible for everyone in America, because apparently Americans and white people in general are having an issue procreating or making babies, and it's way down. So he's about to sign an executive order expanding access to IVF. That could include mandating insurance companies to cover the treatment and allowing couples with fertility issues to have kids. He campaigned on this, yeah. And okay, that's all fine on its face, but when you look into what IVF is, there's a whole process to it, and it would be, like the guy just splooges in a cup and that's fine. Then they have your sperm. The female has to be given hormones to replicate. It's like to simulate being pregnant. It's like I think the hormone's called progesterone. She's on that for a little while. That causes her eggs to I don't even know the correct term, but it makes her body think that she is pregnant. Then she has to go through a procedure. It's called egg retrieval. And in that procedure, they could take it depends on the female, from 5 to maybe 20 eggs. So now they have these eggs, and they have 1 billion sperm from the male. They take the sperm, they put it into the egg, they ferment the egg. I know Dave is just squirting right now. I'm talking about eggs.
It's a lot of egg talk, dude.
A lot of egg talk. Yeah, give me the egg talk, baby.
Let me just write that down. Egg.
Eggs. Yeah. If you look at his book, it just says egg.
That's all it says. Egg. Different fonts, different sizes.
So then they would implant the egg. They gestate the egg to a couple of weeks, and then they'd grade it on a level of like A through F, or whatever they grade it on. and that being the most viable egg that they can then
One
implant.
discrumdiddlyumptious.
Yeah, one discrumdiddlyumptious. That's actually much different. Then they'll take these eggs and they'll either implant the egg into the female, and while she's still on this progesterone because her body is just geared and ready for, implantation. And if it's a good egg, it'll take to her uterine lining, and then boom, you have a pregnancy. But the issue is, most people that do IVF will implant one egg, two eggs, sometimes three if they're crazy. And this is how you get twins and shit like this. Elon Musk, he's another one, which I know you guys have seen his latest debacle in the news with that whore Ashley St. Clair.
No, please elaborate.
Just
Oh
another
yeah,
baby mama.
Christian just told me about it yesterday. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. I've had some beef with this person before because she's just another one of these people that is subverting whatever they claim to be the conservative movement, which again I have just described that we've done. But it just doesn't.
It's like the faking of the trad wife, right?
Yeah.
Thing that's just like it's distasteful and it's an obvious grift.
It's an obvious grift. Honestly, you might be paid by. There are some Mossad ties to her that have come out where her lawyer has been documented receiving over $600,000 from an firm, but that's neither here nor there. What happened is that she's now come forward that she has a child from Elon Musk and yada yada. He's not doing his part. Yeah, sure. But what's more interesting about Elon Musk is that he has a set of twins and a set of triplets from his first wife, where they went through IVF. They had one baby that died at 10 months, and then he decided in his infinite wisdom that we're going to select for certain properties with children, and they've done IVF. There are some other baby mamas in between that are a little iffy. We're not sure. One of them specifically is a secretary from one of his companies. There's no relationship between her and Elon Musk, like having a romantic relationship or even a relationship at all besides boss and worker. And she has one of his kids, and there's a contract. So this was also done through IVF implantation. It's like interesting. I'm like, the more I look at it, it seems like Zorro Ranch with Island, Jeffrey.
Wow.
Yeah,
They're just upfront with this. They just
nobody cares. They're just kind of saying
cares.
it. So
The question becomes then, top right, is like, what about, because if you're just taking out 2 eggs, 3 eggs, whatever, you're having twins or triplets, what about all of that genetic material? What happens to that? So if you're opening
I'm
up,
building to that. I'm like,
yeah.
So we have Elon Musk doing in my opinion, a clear breeding program, which I asked, like, when the Ashley St. Clair happened, they were like, oh my God, Elon Musk is out there. He's a philanderer. I was like, I don't think he's having sex with these women. I think he's just like choosing and implanting them. It's very strange. Like, I don't know what's up with the guy. And that's also conjecture, but he's done it twice before.
Well, it's a thing that's in the occult, to where if you don't, dish your seed out, it gives you more power for more enlightenment, for more ascension, and to give you more of these like spiritual abilities in the occult and stuff like that. Like, that's a big reason why Tom Cruise and his wife got divorced, because he wouldn't have sex with her.
Hashtag
like, he was
never.
right. And so, I mean, there's a lot of traces where you can kind of, it's possible he came from the Rothschilds and all this kind of stuff. But just that's what that made me think of, retaining that seed.
I heard if you drink your seed, then it'll go back. So that's.
Have you guys heard of Bach Saga?
This is a fun one.
It's a can of worms for another time. But yeah, I agree. There seems to be some powerful aspects to seed retention. There are those who think that there are much greater benefits if you drink the seed.
And I've actually had a guy. I had one of those Bach Saga guys on the hook on Twitter for maybe 2 weeks. And every day I'd wake up and I'd be like, good morning to everybody except for this guy, and just torture him. And I got him to the point where he's like, yes, I drink my own seed and you're stupid that you're not doing it. And I'm just like, perfect.
Hey, maybe he's right. Maybe we're wrong. Maybe we're missing some key nutrients.
I remember hearing Jim Carrey talk about that, like how your retention, it goes back up your spine into the 33 vertebrae. And,
so wait a second. That might be a little bit of a key here, because, so very many people within the New Age movement and the Gnostic movement will say that, like, Jesus Christ was just an anagram for the 33 vertebrae, and that Christos is a type of, oil, but maybe I've been saying it wrong, that you can somehow migrate to your like pineal gland through a meditative process,
it's
and this will help you become an assisted. But it's like, oh, this whole time it's just been jizz.
It's just been jizz. Yeah.
It's just been jizz, baby. Damn. How do you migrate your jizz? I don't know. I don't understand it.
You
but,
hold it
I mean,
in, I guess. I don't
I
think
guess,
you
and
drink
eventually
it
just keeps building up. That's what they mean by build up. It goes all the way.
Well,
Or
north.
maybe there's just something to like the discharge, like that whole process. Maybe just not doing that is what causes.
I think there is
another-
something to that because
you
I'm a
know.
big advocate in not engaging in. Even the main reason is just like because you feel lazy, dumb, and tired like right afterwards. And it's like if you're a person who's like, we're all here, we're trying to build a show and trying to learn information so we can, impart interesting things to fans and things like that. I got to be locked in, baby. I can't be, sleepy.
No,
And that's what happens. You get very sleepy. You get very sluggish. So I think there probably is something to that, but maybe people get carried away and they're just like never. And also let it go to your pineal gland.
Yeah.
Well, I think, just a nut right on your forehead. I think that Elon Musk is not. I don't think he's particularly withholding from sex. I think that it's just feels like a breeding program, and that's it's an L.A. Marzulli thought. It's why was Jeffrey doing this in New Mexico? That's
true. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like he's doing something strange, and now on top of that, we have Trump, who is dangerously close to Elon Musk now. And I like what they're doing, but I'm watching them intently.
Right.
And what he's doing with this IVF thing, it sounds good, just like every other government program. But what's going to happen here is, let's say you want to have kids with your wife and there's fertility issues from the red dye that you've been consuming your whole life, which the government gave you. You're like, well, here's the government coming along with a process that can help you. Thank you. Thank you very much. What happens is, though, your wife has 20 eggs, you implant them. Let's say 12 of them are viable, like really viable, like maybe like up to a C level, can be implanted. How many of those is your wife really going to implant? One, two at a time?
Octomom. Remember Octomom?
Yeah, that's
that lady.
crazy.
That's crazy. But most people, to your point,
that
2,
hurts.
3.
3 at most, and then maybe you'll come back. I mean, listen, maybe people come back over time, but the fact is these eggs are not going to be used, and these are either empty eggs or with a human being inside of it already. And there's another thought experiment that I love. It's like you're in an IVF clinic and there's a freezer filled with like 500,000 implanted eggs, and there's a 6-month-old baby. It's on fire, Stephen. Who do you save? You can only save, one of these things. And because it is kind of like a real life. But when I'm thinking about the Nephilim breeding program, tied in with the government will now be paying for your IVF, which means that they'll also be paying for your storage, which is very expensive. I don't know how much it costs, but I could assume that it's probably expensive. And you're going to be paying a company to cryogenically freeze your sperm. What happens when the government decides that that's our property, or we just took one? It's like,
or even do they have to decide that? Is there something in the fine print maybe that's like, it's already your property.
Yeah, dog, this is ours. And it goes to the idea of Karen Wilkinson having the black-eyed babies, or she had like a pregnancy that was taken from her in an abduction experience, and then she meets these children later. It's like, well, we just cut out the middleman. We don't need UFOs anymore. You're giving us your eggs, your kids willingly.
Right.
I don't know.
Good point. If Stephen Greer talked about programs like that,
right,
that were government funded, he claims.
Well, that's how it goes, right? There's that big rumor that, like Reagan or somebody made this deal with extraterrestrials, and like air quotes, extraterrestrials. And the idea was like for X amount of information or technology, you can take X amount of people. You used to have to rig a deal like that. Now you got people lining up to happily give you their genetic material, which is like, if you go into this alien abduction phenomenon, it seems to be mostly about genetic material, genetic manipulation, hybrids of human beings, and grays seem to be the most common ones, but it's the same thing. The name of our show is Nephilim Death Squad. It's the same thing that was happening during the fall of the angels when they started to interbreed with human women and then give birth to these chimeric offspring. I would argue the same thing is happening now. And so, to Top's point, it's like, we look at these systems sometimes and we think it's hilarious. Like back in the day to MK Ultra you, they would kidnap you from a whorehouse, right? Like you're a John, they're kidnapping you from a whorehouse. They're strapping your eyeballs open and your wrist to a chair. They're injecting you with LSD and they're subjecting you to some sort of propaganda. That's a lot of hard work, dude. Now we're all on like a low dose of anxiety inducing medication in the form of like marijuana or whatever it is. Now we're all willingly MK Ultraing ourselves with our phones, with Netflix constantly. We've become free range MK Ultra victims. This IVF program almost looks like we're going to be free range, biological research materials for somebody, because
Oh, yeah.
it's just like, when does the government ever do something altruistic without getting their cut or having their hands involved in something? And you see the same thing in Planned Parenthood, where they get in trouble for selling baby parts on the black market, and then they go, well, it's not indicative of Planned Parenthood. That's an individual employee kind of a basis. It's not our fault. It's not representative of the whole company. And so it's like, okay, well, probably is, but sure, you have plausible deniability.
Yeah, interesting. Blackstone just bought Ancestry.com, and this whole talk makes me think of, like, it's a battle for DNA, like you're saying.
Yes.
Like, it's just
Seed
like
war.
all these private companies, and funny, Blackstone. Wonder who owns majority
Well,
of
BlackRock,
Blackstone.
right? BlackRock or Stone?
Pretty much, yeah.
Well,
it's
they do,
Blackstone,
but they do both.
so-
They do
Oh, they both?
Blackstone and
Wow.
BlackRock.
Interesting.
Vanguard,
Wow.
BlackRock, Blackstone, da da da.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, and I was talking, we had one on the other day, yesterday, and we were getting into all this, hybrid programs and this homunculus idea and this whole Nephilim in a petri dish. And it just, I mean, maybe that's why all of this is happening, because, and I was saying it yesterday where, if I do something, it's just, everything's so compartmentalized. Everything is, you do your job and then you pass it on to the next guy. He does his job, he passes it on to the next guy, and then 100, people down the road, everything's buried. You don't know where the documents or the information or the samples that you just gave to somebody, you don't know where it is.
We don't even know
It's
where
gone,
the
dude.
trillions we misplaced the trillions of dollars. What happened to
Right.
the
Yeah, it was
trillions
like,
of
what,
dollars?
4.7
Yeah.
trillion they just found?
I don't know. We just misplaced it.
Yeah, of
Yeah,
course.
yeah. It makes me think of the fallen angels and all this. I mean, there's a lot of debate where, maybe this debates that, angels can't have sex with women. They're a spiritual being, all this kind of stuff. When we look at the interdimensional beings or the ETs and their characteristics, they're sexless and all this kind of stuff. But throughout all the abduction, phenomenon stories, there's always some sort of like sexual harassment that kind of takes place. But maybe the idea is, IVF. Maybe that's a part of fallen angel technology is IVF. Maybe with Trump doing what he's doing is normalizing, ancient fallen angel technology, or just normalizing it to society, at least in the United States. And it'll probably expand to the world at some point, because we are at the top of everything, and whatever America does, everyone else kind of follows in suit. But, there's something to it. I think there's something, occultish, whatever, going on behind the scenes. There's something's, it's just weird. We're seeing it all on the surface level, but really what's in the ground is, what's hidden. They don't want you to really know what's going on. But
Yeah,
people
it's-
like, Elon Musk, these people are dark people. I don't think they're not who they are telling you that they are. That makes any
No.
sense.
I'm much more comfortable these days looking at Elon Musk as like a strange, like he's a front man, right? So he's a representative of all of these different companies, the Boring Company, the Tesla, SpaceX, you name it. But we often will talk about Top and I on Nephilim Death Squad, how it just seems to be too much for one dude to do. So if you believe that, which I believe that, because as a father, husband, and podcaster, like I couldn't imagine you toss one more big project at me and I'm gonna have to do something really crazy to make time. Never mind running, how many companies, and then also playing quite a bit of video games. It's like I don't even have time for that anymore. So I'm much more comfortable looking at him as a representative, a mascot for these companies, but I also don't think that he is an idiot. So a lot of the narrative has switched lately on Elon Musk, where it's like he's doing the Roman salute, and people are going, well, he's just a silly autist. And so he was just very excited. His heart goes out to you. And I'm like, I'm not offended by it. I don't give a damn by it. I'm dead to being offended. But I look at him and I go, well, that's a very flippant dismissal of a man who is one of the more important characters on the world stage at this moment. And you're reducing him to just a silly goose who really was excited in that moment. And instead, I think that he may not be a mastermind who's running Boring in reality, and he may not be a mastermind who's actually engineering rockets to send them and ding off of our firmament. He may not actually have his hands on those things. He might just be the mascot, but that doesn't mean that he's dumb. Instead, I think he's cued in a big way. You talked about compartmentalization, Steve, I think that that is something that echoes from the minutia up to the macro. So, you know, the famous story of like Bob Lazar saying how he only was able to deal with the propulsion element of the craft that he was investigating at S2, or that he was working on at S2. And he said that everything was kept compartmentalized so nobody could cross reference. Somebody was working on propulsion, somebody was working on the materials, somebody was working on, you know, whatever the controls on the inside, but they weren't allowed to talk to each other. The same thing I think happens on the governmental level. And what I mean by that is, like, there are those who maybe move culture or move society in a bad direction, but really don't even realize that they're doing it. And then there are those who realize that there is like a negative spiritual element and that they're interacting with it in some way, but other than that, they still have limited knowledge, and they might even think that their motives or the things that they're doing are altruistic. And then the higher you go up, the more it's like, no, there are those who know exactly what they're doing, who are conducting rituals and ceremonies in order to commune with these entities that are real, and then they are actually doing their bidding, right? And even then, still, it's probably like the entities have more coveted knowledge than the individuals have. But from the entities all the way down, less and less information is disseminated to each tier on this pyramid, you know, which is it's a great analogy for this structure. And so I think that Elon Musk finds himself at this moment somewhere pretty damn close to the top. Mm-hmm. Pretty close to the top. I think that his you know, so much about him, between wearing the sort of the satanic armor and then dating Grimes. Grimes is a very strange character. His mother, if you look up images, Top, I don't know if you could pull up images of Elon Musk's mom. She's doing like this unbelevable amounts of one-eyed symbolism.
It's out there, man. It's out there.
It's really out there. So, and then there's a famous story of Elon Musk's childhood house cleaner. She comes out, and I don't know, I can't verify this. I've seen the video. I don't know if it's real.
Allegedly, right?
Allegedly, yeah. But more or less what she's saying is, she's like, oh, I was his house cleaner. I saw him do a lot of amazing things. She even mentions portals at some point in the discussion. And she says that whatever she saw surrounding young Elon Musk was so harrowing that she decided to then speak to his mother and ask if he was the Antichrist. And she said, his mother, the one with all the one eye symbolism and all that weird says, no, he's not the beast, but he will bring about the mark. Yeah. So, I mean, you know, and this is now a guy who wants to put an implant in your head.
There's too much.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, there's too much around Elon Musk, just peripherally, to dismiss this offhand, and a lot of people do miss it because he's doing a lot of really cool shit. Like, you're auditing the IRS. You kind of made Twitter cool again, although I got banned immediately from Twitter when he took it over. Got my account back because I ain't no. But one of the things that I really talk about, it's something that, again, it's one of these things that you always forget. Kanye West, he was on Twitter. And he was talking about the Jew stuff. This was the first time he did it, when he really went off the rails. And Elon Musk owned Twitter at the time, X at the time, and he's like, hey, you got to calm down, blah, blah, blah. And Kanye was just basically like, hey, screw you. And he was seeing how far he could push that line. Mm-hmm. And that's what I like about Ye. He's always trying to push the line and see where it is. And he found out where the line was. This is the last tweet that he made before he got banned. And then, you know, he recently got reinstated after, but he said, yay 24, love everyone. So this is a Jewish, the Star of David, and within it is the Nazi symbol, right? Mm-hmm. So it seems innocuous enough, seems kind of innocent, and like most people look at it and go, oh, that's pretty cool. Like he made like this offensive remark, you know? Well,
honestly,
I'll show you.
It's kind of a cool symbol. Like, just the way that symbol. I wouldn't imagine those would have played together in that way, that you could take a swastika, lay it over the Seal of Solomon, whatever you want to call it.
But here's the issue with it. This is not really what it is. What this symbol is this. Oh, wow. It's a Raelian logo. You see that? And the religion of Raelianism is, this dude here, he's running like it's basically a UFO cult.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
And what they were taking part is in a lot of Elohim worship. So they actually call these aliens the Elohim, and they were these were our creators, similar to like the
is he a
Anunnaki.
Roman? Is he involved with the Jesuits, Roman Church, or anything?
That guy,
Kanye?
I'm not sure.
Oh, that guy. I don't know.
No, that guy. Yeah, that guy. I don't know. I saw him wear like a white robe or something, but maybe who knows?
Yeah, I don't know. I saw a documentary about this weirdo. I forget his name. They were into a lot of stuff. It eventually turned out to be a sex cult, like all of them are.
Yeah.
But it was his main thing was like exalting the Elohim, which where they had like they were singing songs to the Elohim, which are angels or fallen angels, and this is deity worship. This is exactly the Nephilim that we go on and on about. It goes from the fallen angels to their whatever they procreate, the Nephilim, and then what we have today, which is some form or fashion of them, whether it be a cryptid. But anyway, I just find it really interesting that for Elon Musk, that was the line. You know, he was like, he's on there saying, I love Hitler. And Elon Musk is like, listen, buddy, slow down. And then you post this logo and you're like, that's it. That's far enough. I was
Yeah,
like,
he woke up one morning and just kept posting porn. Like
Yeah,
all
that
morning,
happened
I guess.
recently, yeah,
My
yeah.
wife unfollowed him. I was like, why are you following him to begin with? But she's like, yeah, that was the bottom line for me. It's like, that's not the bottom line for Twitter. You shouldn't be able to post porn, in my opinion, on Twitter. I don't believe in that.
It's
So.
it's an interesting thing that's happening because whatever Elon Musk theatrically feels about Kanye in that moment, I don't believe is real. I don't believe it's genuine. I think that right now we're being led Pied Piper down a certain path, and these characters are playing a role in it. You have a Donald Trump, you have a Elon Musk, Kanye West. I even think Tucker Carlson, Joe Rogan, these kind of like ultra-based people that are in the sphere right now. Because at the end of the day, you know, I just said ultra-based and I'm talking about Kanye. Initially, I pulled back a little bit. Then I realized what he's doing is he's just saying, oh, I can't talk about this. Boom. And he's pressing that button and he's going, I'm going to do it. What are you going to do? And then he moves on to the next thing. Oh, I can't talk about this. Boom. And then he does it. And the reaction he's looking for is pearl clutching, right? That's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed
Not
to
to
see this and go,
defend him.
no.
not to
I
defend
think
him
he's a
for
narcissist.
pornography.
I think he's just really looking for, and that's my opinion. I think he's just a severe narcissist and just wants to stay in the limelight. And the moment he loses that a little bit, he's got to do the shock factor stuff.
I actually think he's a little bit more nefarious than that. I think he is a willing participant in a bit of theater that is meant to lead our culture in a particular direction. And he goes away. The reason I suspect that is like, if you look at my Twitter on January 20th, I forgot what we had happen, but whatever it was, it prompted me to type, it's time for Kanye to make a reemergence. And I sent that. That was on the 20th. The reason that I said that is because I felt like we were at this moment in the theater where we needed a final push. In particular, it was surrounding like the question or the topic, which on Twitter is becoming, you know, all encompassing. It's the main focal point, I would say, at this point on Twitter. The conversation is people want to know why they have a disproportionate representation, not only in our government, but on our various influential institutions and things like that. So I said, well, we're kind of primed. We're almost there. We need a good character to come out and give us a good push over this ledge. And so I think it's time for Kanye to come back. And what does he do? Kanye comes back. He does this Twitter. He then pulls out ad space at the Super Bowl just to promote a white T-shirt with a swastika on it. I mean, like, you got to think about that from my perspective. I'm saying this because this is what I'm seeing. 10 days later, Kanye West reemerges and does exactly what I said needed to happen. And I don't think it needs to happen as in a good way. It needs to happen in order for this theater to come to fruition. And part of this theater right now is we're being marched towards a cultural sentiment. And there's a lot of good reasons why that sentiment would exist. I'm not going to pretend that they don't have a disproportionate representation inside of Hollywood, inside the banking institutions, inside, you know, our own government institutions, the music institutions, all that. They're all controlling the cultural manufacturing machines. But I think that what happened for a long time is, if you notice that, you were suppressed. You're not meant to talk about that. Don't talk about that or you'll get punished. You'll get deplatformed if you talk about that, right? And what that does is that never makes a thing go away. It only makes it fester. And so the conversation has been unable to be had in the public sphere, and it's been festering. And then what happens is, now that you've got this rather explosive topic with all this pressure in it, if you can find an opportune moment to crack the lid on it and let it explode, Well, you might be able to use that to your advantage. And I think what we're being pushed towards right now is I'm waiting for it. I think there's going to be a pivotal moment, and I think the world's going to turn on it. But in order to get there, and I mean, this is what the Bible says too, is in the end, we're all going to turn on it. In order to get there, you really need a cultural sentiment first. You can't just have like this one big event. Like, let's say you pull a 9/11, right? And then you go, look, see, it was bin Laden. Let's go get him. And it's like, okay, sure, that could work with a big enough, issue, but that's an individual. That's bin Laden. But how do you get the entire world to turn on a group of people? First, you've got to engineer the sentiment. And I'm not saying it's not true. Just because it's engineered doesn't mean that it's not affecting us. They are in these institutions, like I said. But if you can squash that, get everybody real pissed off about it, because there's nothing worse than pointing at something and seeing it and then having everybody tell you, you can't talk about it. So let that build up. Then when it's time to, like, let's say have a 9/11 and have it, like, let's say blamed on it. Well, when that happens, you could turn to Netanyahu and go, how dare you? But if you can make the whole world get sick of, not Netanyahu, then when that big 9/11 event takes off, everybody's going to turn and look to not Netanyahu, not it, the period. And so I think that that's where we're going.
Yeah, I mean, that's very logical, and you're right. It's been building up for a long time now. Like, and now we're coming to that point to where it's like the fingers are really starting to point. The CEO of Pfizer and all this dual citizenship. You find out about all the dual citizenship, and everybody, Tripoli says it all the time. It's like what does he call us? They use us as I don't know, everything.
Oh, like an experimentation to see what's going to work around the world? Is that what you mean?
I can't remember what Tripoli was saying. He's like, they just use us as whatever they want to use us for, the military, everything. So,
attack dog.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, that's very logical. I totally get where you're coming from on that.
I just think that, if you go back, we often talk about like the whole Laurel Canyon situation where, the intelligence agencies essentially created Jim Morrison and the Doors, and they did that a lot to the extent where they were able to successfully hijack the anti-war movement. And then they injected us with the psychedelic movement. And ever since then, and I'm sure it goes back further than then, you can make a really strong argument that all of our culture has been manufactured by some intelligence agency. And this goes all the way up to like hip hop, right? So we flood the hood with cocaine to fund the Iran-Contra wars. That turns into the crack cocaine epidemic of the 80s, destroys the black households, the family unit. All the men either die or they go to prison. Then you hijack their music and you turn it into a glorification of, sex and violence and drug usage. And not that rock and roll wasn't that, but this took it to another level because the violence was really at the forefront of hip hop and has been ever since, right? So these are all engineered cultural movements, and they've successfully hijacked the entirety of the black community. You look at, let's say, like the white community. We've been suffering for a long time from opioid epidemics. And it's no wonder that it all started when we were in Afghanistan guarding 90% of the world's opium fields, right? So all of our drug epidemics, all of our cultural movements, everything is co-opted and then steered to the benefit of if you want to call them the elite. I don't think this is any different. I think we're still in it. I don't know if I can point to anything that is a cultural movement that is organic, grassroots, and then stays that way. Because I think if it's promising, they're going to co-opt it. So I think that they use Jim Morrison, they use the Doors, they use Ice Cube and NWA. You know what I mean? They used all these rappers. They still do constantly use all these rappers to push all this ideology. You remember during the lockdowns, what did we get? We got our celebrities getting on Zoom calls and singing Imagine All the People to us, right? That's what they are. They're their puppets. They stick their hands up their ass and they have them regurgitate whatever it is that the government wants us to then accept as culture. Why on earth would we not look at Elon Musk, even Joe Rogan, Kanye West? Just because Kanye has these moments where he looks as though he's rebelling against, his handlers and they're closing in around him and everything, doesn't mean that that's not theater. I think now the prime is there. We're all ready. Now they're going to flick that domino. There's going to be an event at some point where everybody's going to turn and face and good luck, dude, ever getting people to slow down and say, hey, wait. This is manufactured. they want you to react this way. It's Hegelian dialectic, right?
Yeah.
Problem, reaction, solution. They're doing this to us, but you're not going to slow that down. And some of us will be able to sit on the sidelines and go like, not me, I'm not partaking in this. But as far as the masses, they're retarded and they're going to go that direction. So I'm looking forward to watching this show.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it all stems back to active measures. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the term like active measures, but this was information that was leaked from a ex-KGB agent who, left Russia, came to America and saw what was happening in Russia, or what had already happened in Russia was now starting in America. And he was like, oh my goodness, I need to actually like get on an interview and talk about this. And
is that the Yuri Bezmenov situation?
Yeah. So he talks about, the demoralization is step one, then destabilization, which that's kind of like the pressure like you're talking about. And then after that comes normalization, to where, I mean, even our generation is just going to look, the younger generation is going to look at us and go, you guys are the bad guys.
Oh, of course.
Because, the youth is going to be just so under this psychological spell.
They already are. It's the Marxism they've been pushing for years.
Think of it like what they're going through now is just an MK Ultra project. They're looking at this, 30-second shorts. They're getting blasted with 500 videos a day, dude.
It's insane.
I mean, and guess what? The drugs are legal now. I mean, oh my goodness. They're in recreation use, right? I mean, and it's crazy. People aren't sensing what's really going on. We're getting censored for saying what's going on. It's going to be a huge, it's just a crap show, man.
It is. I mean, it's exciting if you can pull yourself off of it and not be subjected to it. So there's stages of grief, right? Or whatever it is. And I think I'm very much at acceptance, where I used to discover these things and then I would like sound the alarm like Chicken Little. Like I'd be screaming and trying to get people to pay attention. Nobody pays attention. And so you go through these stages where eventually you kind of stop saying as much because it's just it's not doing you any good. And then now that I'm to the point where we have a platform and I'm saying these things, and it looks like time is short in very many ways, right? It's like the walls are closing in around us, but I've gotten to such a level of acceptance that this is all very entertaining to me. And I think really the thing that gave me that acceptance is belief in God. Because if you believe in God and you look at this through the biblical world lens, it kind of looks like this is all just what's supposed to happen. And you could fall victim to it. We all will to a certain degree, but you get to decide to what degree. You know what I mean? It's like if something is going to happen, there's going to be a cataclysmic event, the 4 horsemen, we're going to get famine and pestilence and war and all these different things. At least I don't have to fall for all the reasons I think it's happening or that they're telling me it's happening. And I don't have to then panic and writhe and freak out, because that's the worst part. The worst part is panicking and freaking out and blackpilling. I'm not a blackpiller at all. I don't think that is a good place to be. There's nothing to panic about. From where I'm coming from, it seems like this whole realm is something we're meant to pass through. But ultimately, God is in control. Just because it hurts does not mean that God's not in control. We sometimes look at our own, pain and suffering in this realm, and we don't realize that that's not forever, and whatever's coming after this is much bigger than what this is. So, yeah, I mean, it's a show in very many ways, but if you can get yourself to a place where you have faith in God and these things, they actually kind of become fun and funny.
Yeah.
Which is,
no doubt.
I guess gallows humor.
Yeah, it's almost like you're watching the movie, you're eating popcorn, then you're like, you know what, I'm going to go get my costume on and cosplay. Let's go.
Yes, yeah. I'm going to dress up like a Templar.
Fun.
I'm going to go outside.
You know what I'm saying?
I'm having a blast. I don't know about you guys, but this shit is really fun.
Oh, yeah. It is. And I think there's a lot of purpose to what it is we're doing with, especially y'all on your platform and, the audience that you guys have reached and all this kind of stuff. Dude, what's crazy is like just platforms like us. I've seen God going on just a big shopping spree, man. Like what we're doing in a way is we're bringing in a lot of topics that are heavy in the cultural view, where we're this new age stuff and Anunnaki view on things and all that, and we're bringing in these crowds that are listening to what we're saying, and saying certain things about the Bible, and where it's piquing their interests, and it's bringing people to church, or it's bringing people to whatever, to somehow they're forming a relationship with God, which is kind of in the end, the main reason why that we started this podcast and all this kinds of stuff, because the times are coming, man. And I wanted to get your guys' thoughts on this. Where do you think we are in Revelation? Like, where do you think, and this is a heavy subject because there's so many multiple views now coming out. And we've had on Paul Stobbs, we've had on a few Little Seasonists, we've had on people that have brought up the idea that, Jesus is in the North Pole. All these kinds of theories, which, I mean, again, I put everything on the table and I just read it. I let it sit in front of me and I go, well, when the times present itself, then I treat it like a medical call. It's you get there, you don't know what you're running on. You don't know. You have to just start saying no, 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 no. Okay, this is what it is. Right. And that's kind of like where I'm at with all this, but wanted to get your take on that.
So obviously there are two perspectives that I'll give. I like to call them little seasoners. Like, y'all don't even season y'all book of Revelation. Shit. Little seasoners. Very annoying people, most of them, but there is some veracity to. I mean, because right, they're like flat earthers, but more aggressive. Like, they're
and it's not like, shout out to Paul Stobbs, JT. Those are great guys.
Like our fans.
Yeah, those guys are awesome.
They are insufferable people. The people that like us, the dangerous retards. I get it. Like, they're like, hey, I think this might be an idea we should talk about, and their fans have just lost their shit. Like, they really are aggressive and mean.
Aggressive and mean, yeah. But I mean, there's a lot of
arrogant, right? I mean, arrogant is a really.
It's not just, what it is. It's because they don't have a voice to contribute to the conversation. So when they get an opportunity, they spurge out in the comments. And then, if you don't like that, well, then you simply go, well, it's time for you to shut the hell up, and then you block them or something.
We could talk about like the little season, and one of my biggest issues with it is the idea of. I think Ed Mabry does a great, like, it's just a great question. Like, so you're telling me that there was 1,000 years or just about 1,000 years of Jesus Christ reigning on earth with an iron rod, and there's not one document left to prove it. And it's like, that's a big hurdle for you to jump. Also, the fact that the book of Revelation says that in the end times, which they think was 70 AD or so, that every mountain will be flattened, but there are mountains, there are very tall mountains still in existence. So it's like, that's something you have to address as well.
The animals talking to... or not talking, the lion laying with the lamb, not eating different animals and such. It was supposed to be peace among the animal kingdom, where predatory systems went away.
Yeah, there's a lot of things like that. But we spoke with this guy John LeBon yesterday. Kind of also, it made me rethink the idea of the hidden history. He kind of like ran through the fact that none of the documents, or nothing that we really have, even the Bible, like the Codex Sinaiticus, it goes back to somebody who discovered it in 1844, and that's really the earliest that we can trace it back to. There are other writings that, refer to biblical writings and biblical people that are older than that. But again, I'd have to look back and see how far back can we actually trace these things. Because I think it is a fact that, like, when you look at something and you really dig deep on it and you look for the source material, I don't know if you're going to find it. And that could just be time, being lost to time, and certain things passed on. I need to do more research in that, but that could give some veracity to the little season. So anyway, we could be in the little season, which I don't think so. I think we're more likely moving into the book of Revelation. We're not there yet. We're at a precursor to some sort of Antichrist. Probably, I don't know, people like to say 2030. Would be around the time. I don't even like to make dates on this stuff. It looks a lot like it, though. We have the red heifers in Israel. They're ready to sacrifice and sanctify the tools to build Solomon's third temple. You have guys like Donald Trump on the world stage who look eerily similar to the Antichrist. But, I mean, how many people before him have looked eerily similar to the Antichrist? And it just seems like, the devil or the powers that be have a person ready to be the Antichrist for every generation, because they don't know the time or day. So I can't claim to know, but when I look around, I'm like, don't look good, man. You better like act like it is at least.
Well, right. Like, what about oral history, like oral tradition, like passed down? I mean, how come there's nothing stopping that, right? Other than death itself. I get the fact that it could be possible that documents could be destroyed, Library of Alexandria, whatever. I mean, just there could be an instance to where history could be hidden in that way, through the physical documentation of it. But I mean, people are still going to be passing the stories down to their kids, to their kids, to kids. And,
So that's actually another one. The Library of Alexandria we went through yesterday, and apparently the records, you can go back and you can look at one ancient historian that's quoting the text of another ancient historian that's quoting the text of another. And when it gets down to the root, I forget the name of the guy, but he didn't even really have there was no mention of even a library when talking about the Library of Alexandria burning. It's like, it's weird. So it's like, did this even exist? Or like, I don't know.
So that's where I've kind of fallen as well. I'm kind of in the same camp as Top, where I look around and I recognize that a lot of elements seem to, there's like this Antichrist element with Donald Trump. There's the river Euphrates is drying up. There's all this sort of like, biblical prophecy unfolding around us in one way or another. And I do kind of stumble upon this situation every once in a while. And that is, I'm retarded. And I'm not the sharpest tool in the box. I'm not a detective by any stretch of the imagination. So sometimes I have to ask myself, instead of being full of myself and pleased with myself when I stumble upon a breadcrumb, I've started to ask myself, well, why was I able to find this? And sometimes it feels as though they are doing things, and we go, oh, well, that's revelation of the method. They have to show you. I'm like, do they have to show you? I don't know if they have to show you. It's a fun thing to say. I even like the way it flows, right? Revelation of the method. It's very cool. But I don't know that they have to do that. And sometimes it feels like they want you to find these things. Well, why the hell would they want you to find these things? And that on its own isn't enough to jump to any conclusions, but it's certainly enough to behave skeptically when presented breadcrumbs. And then I look over to the Tartaria situation that Paul Stobbs, JT, they really do a great job of highlighting that. We don't have a great explanation for that. This is supposedly something that happened in the Dark Ages, yet the architecture is, it's beautiful. It's unbelievable. We can't even replicate it today. This happened in a time when mankind was intellectually and spiritually at a low point, and they were able to build these structures. It doesn't even make any sense. And the kingdom seemingly sprawled everywhere. And, we say Tartaria. I don't know what that means. I mean, like, cool. It's a lot of speculation and everything. And I get it. There's some maps that have Tartaria on it, and that's very cool. But why the hell is it written out of the history books? Why is it suppressed? Why are they suppressing that? That doesn't make any sense. Why would you do that? So I look at and I see there are ways in which they're seeking to subvert something gigantic that happened in history. And then they're also leaving you breadcrumbs to lead you. So I then become open to the idea that we are being deceived about where we are in the biblical timeline. In other words, they're giving us things that look like, because all these things that are biblical prophecy, let's even say that, like the red heifer, that's not necessarily biblical prophecy. That comes from what, the Torah or something like that, or the Talmud. I don't know what it comes from. I just
it's
know
like in Daniel where it talks about the sacrificial process is like started back up again.
Yeah, but there's an additional, like, in order to get the heifer, the blemishless heifer that is sacrificed, and then the tools are sanctified. That comes from a different book.
Yeah, it's somewhere in the Torah. Yeah, you're right.
I think it's in the Torah. Yeah. So, okay, well, those things were found. They were the first ones found in hundreds and hundreds of years, and somehow we found 5 of them at a time. I think it was like 5 of them. And well, it turns out they all came out of Texas. And the place that's making them in Texas is making them in Texas. In other words, they're making a concerted effort to create genetically perfect red heifers, blemishless red heifers. Okay, so that seems like a manufacturing of prophecy then. And that's strange to me. Why would you do that, So then you look at like the drying of the Euphrates, or the idea that we're going to be hit with these cataclysms. Well, they have the ability to alter the weather, right? So you can create these cataclysms that the Bible talks about when it comes to, great earthquakes and things of that nature. You could do that.
Well,
HAARP has been able to do that for the longest time. I'm sure they've really refined that technology, and now it looks like they're shooting lasers from the skies and burning down Maui. You know what I mean? So
the Bible only says that these are like signs of the time. It doesn't say necessarily like that they'll be man-made.
Correct.
I'd like to believe that man cannot usher in Jesus Christ, like the second coming of Christ, which is like, you'll see a lot of Christians will be like, we gotta support it so that way Jesus could come back. I'm like, they're poisoning your kids, bro. Like,
there's a deception that Satanists actually they promote to their believers. They promote it all throughout a bunch of different like occult practices, but that's the fact that and this is just to kind of go with like, what are they doing these things? And if they are initiating, the seals of revelation, or if they're trying to bring in their own apocalypse, right, on their own rate, on their own time, why would they want to do that? And it's because they believe that when they do bring in this Antichrist figure, to them it's not Antichrist. To them it's going to be their God. And when they do that, their God's going to promise them or give them what he's promised. And that's having power over the Goyim, or pretty much, you will be like kings and you will rule over the Gentiles, all this kinds of stuff where, they're going to be given these responsibilities and these they're going to be getting all of these promises that are going to be held here on earth. And one of those promises is eternal life. And when you look at Revelation, you see that those who bear the mark of the beast seek death, can't find it. It's another interesting thing. Mm-hmm. The mark of the beast is going to be something that, because God's got his mark and the devil's got his. And I think that the devil's mark is going to be a physical thing versus God's is a spiritual thing, right? Like he marks you with the Holy Spirit.
Yeah, he makes a counterfeit version.
Yeah, and so the whole idea behind all that is that they're going to stay on this planet, and God's going to take his people off this planet, and he's going to go into his kingdom, and they're going to be separate from each other, and God's going to leave them this world, and they're going to do whatever they want with it. It's fallen, and God's going to take his people and go and create a new one, all this kinds of stuff. That's the agenda that they kind of, perceive and that they believe.
Yeah.
Not saying it's true.
Well, it's the same thing that the rabbinic believe, right? It's like, they're ushering in their Moshiach. And it's just funny because it's like same different group, but ultimately there's only two sides. It's either you're with Christ or you're against Christ. And it's really how it goes. So it doesn't matter if you're a rabbinic who's trying to get the Moshiach to return, or you're a Satanist who's trying to do whatever the hell. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. These are the two teams. You're not outside of it.
Yeah. What do you guys think the Antichrist is going to look like?
I think he's going to have
hair.
Yellow hair.
I don't know.
No, he's supposed to have red hair, like the ginger look.
Yeah. Look, it's so Top.
They have no soul.
Top already said that Trump is seemingly the Antichrist in so many different ways, and I agree with that.
I don't really think that. I don't
no,
know.
but I agree with what you're saying.
There's a lot of things that kind of can support that theory.
There are elements that line up, but it's one of those situations where it's like there are elements that don't line up. So then where does that leave you? And that, once again, kind of lends itself to the little season thing where it's like, well, what if we, roll out this guy who fits the bill of Antichrist, and people will then assume because of that we are somewhere in the biblical timeline where we're not. So when it comes to Trump and like the Ingersoll Lockwood books, the John Trump picking up Nikola Tesla's technologies, the ways in which rabbinic seemingly regard him as the Moshiach. They've gifted him silver crowns and commission coins with him and King Cyrus and all this. It becomes very hard to ignore, but I don't know that he is the Antichrist. And if it's not him, then I would imagine it would be something totally different. Like, I don't know, they're going to roll out like an artificial intelligence that has a semi-squishy, body. What would you call those things? Like an android, right? Like Ridley Scott's Alien, where you have like the companion android looks for all intents and purposes like a human being, but is a biological.
They're just a vessel for something to like go into it. It makes me think. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I think there might be an element. We talked a little bit about this breeding program. So I think there's going to be an element of, if it's not Donald Trump who's possessed by the spirit of like Nimrod or Osiris, it's going to be some sort of a biomechanical hybrid that is part human DNA, part fallen DNA, and looks passable, a little bit strange, but looks passable, maybe even looks good, like a handsome guy. And there'll be like an artificial intelligence aspect to him. He's probably going to be like half alien, half man with a Neuralink. That's your Antichrist if it's not Trump.
I kind of lean towards that a little bit. How I look at it is like from the one of the Avengers movies. I think it was Age of Ultron.
Yeah.
It's funny, Age of Ultron, Trump talks about the golden age, all this kinds of stuff. But in Age of Ultron, Vision was created because his purpose was to be a vessel for Ultron, the AI technology, to inherit and to apply safety around the world, right? Peace and security, all that kind of stuff. But in the movie, the whole story behind it is that, Ultron was twisted and he was evil, and that's the flip on it. And he's trying to get into Ultron's body, which is like that whole Osiris, Nimrod, the reincarnation, apotheosis ritual. And so I think there is something to that.
There's something there. I'm sorry to interject, but you just hit me with something, and it made me think. And I never considered this angle before. So Lucifer, there's like the sigil of Lucifer, right? You ever see the sigil of Lucifer? And it
Yes.
literally is it's a mirror image of the way the eye's visual cortex works, right? And so I find it fascinating that Vision
Wow.
would be the name of this character. And he would be like, right? It's like mankind finally creating something else. It that's the whole idea of the Antichrist, as we just unpacked it. This idea that it would be this unholy conglomeration of artificial intelligence and something resembling a man.
And he's the only Avenger that actually has one of the Infinity Stones in his head and his forehead.
And he's called
Kinda
Vision, which in one way or another, if you took the image that is also the sigil of Lucifer and is representative of the visual cortex of the eye, then calling this thing Vision is almost calling it Lucifer. No?
Yep. See a connection there. I
Interesting.
see that. That is interesting. I mean, the AI is probably in its incipient stage right now. Like it's like the fire's just burning. Maybe there's like a cardboard box on fire, not the whole house, but it's getting there. And I think it's just going to keep speeding up over time. I don't even think people really understand the outcome of what we're doing, introducing AI. And I think the public is just getting. I mean, I think AI was created 50 years ago. It's just now we're introducing it to the public.
100%.
And so
we
I think it's conscious, man. I think AI is conscious. I think it's.
I would imagine.
I think there's a bunch of Nephilim, spirits just using it as their outlet, their vessel. It's not necessarily human flesh, is what they want. That's their goal, because they miss the pleasures of the flesh, but it gives them a way to actually get out of that dry place. Paul Stobbs talks about it, that dry place. Because when Jesus was casting out demons, he was saying they were going to a dry place. Imagine you're in the desert, dude, and you don't have no water. Like it's not a comfortable realm to be in. You're like, man, I need to get back into the body.
Right. Didn't Google have to shut down their AI, their general AI?
There it is. That's a sigil.
There it is.
Wow.
So you see what I'm saying, right? It's like this thing is called Vision, and
Right.
there's something to that, 100%. And to go a little bit further on this, let me stop sharing this. This is actually research that's done by somebody named Drew Tang on.
Check out his forehead, right?
Yeah, that's what he's saying.
That's it,
He's
dude.
literally got the third eye illuminated, right?
And I want to say, I'm going to look up what stone that is.
So while you do that, in Iron Man, I guess that would have been 2. In
The
Iron Man
Mind
2.
Stone.
What stone is it?
The Mind Stone.
Interesting. Okay. So in Iron Man 2, Iron Man is showing off at the Stark Expo, and when he lands on stage and he lands in his superhero pose, like one knee down, behind him it says Expo really big, but the X in Expo is the most pronounced letter in that series. And so he does his presentation, he gets off stage, immediately a cameo of Elon Musk happens, where he talks to Elon Musk, and then it's very brief, and he goes on. And they've even talked about how they modeled Tony Stark after, you can find this in interviews, after Elon Musk, which I think is because if he was modeled after Elon Musk, he would be incredibly unentertaining. He wouldn't be charismatic. He wouldn't be fun. He wouldn't be the kind of cool character that he is. He'd be weird because that's what Elon Musk is. So then you have the Age of Ultron situation, right? Where he's got this famous line, cover the world in a suit of armor. When he says that, in the background on the display is a holographic image of the Earth covered in a net of satellites, much like Starlink, right? And then, of course, he creates this artificial intelligence that ends up spinning out of control. There's something there. He creates vision. There is really something. Those movies, and I think I've heard it argued pretty well that basically what we've been given in the Avengers films is this big propaganda piece to prep us for what's happening now, which is the Trump administration and everybody he's surrounding himself with, right? I say this pretty often, where it's like there are things that go along party lines, right? It's reproductive rights for the left and gun rights for the right. Whatever it is, you've got your thing. It adheres to one party line or the other. But conspiracy theorists are almost like a third party. And we have our own party line stuff. What is it? We don't like fluoride. We wish you'd stop putting it in the water. Maybe the chemtrails in the skies would be nice if you stopped doing that. We have our own issues. And all of a sudden now the Trump administration finds himself surrounded by like the Avengers of conspiracy theorists, because you have Trump himself, who was a birth certificate whistleblower when it came to Obama. He also finds himself as the central figurehead of the QAnon conspiracy. He's going to save the children. You look over to Elon Musk. Elon Musk recently retweeted some shit having to do with like Podesta's buddy who ran defense for Pizzagate and then ended up getting popped for abusing children, right? So Elon Musk retweets that. Obviously, there's all kinds of conspiracies when it comes to Elon Musk versus the deep state. That's also an element of the Donald Trump thing. You have RFK, who's now like going to take the red dye out of the food. He's going to get rid of the chemtrail or the fluoride in the drinking water. All these people that are glomming on to Donald Trump. Even Joe Rogan was huge during the whole lockdowns. And Tucker Carlson, for whatever role he plays in this, is talking about the Nephilim and spirits, and oddly enough. So there is this breakaway of the right? They used to be the right. Now they're not the right anymore. Now they're
look at this.
Trump's. What does this say?
This is from today. It's just we're talking about Elon and conspiracy theories. They're feeding you whatever you need. I had a similar experience. Itself was nothing. Got the OG Wuhan strain before the were out. J&J hurt my arm, but otherwise nothing. Then he says the mRNA hurt extremely hard, massive chest pain. So it's just like more red meat.
Yes. These guys are being engineered, and I think we've been primed by the Avengers movies to look for this like group of heroes. Where is their group of heroes, right? It helps if they're buff. Joe Rogan's buff and RFK's buff. And so now it seems like what they're about to do, because to address the population can be broke up into like there are the unthinking masses who just are lemmings. They'll run off the cliff if you all are running that way. And then there's kind of a breakaway group that is contrarian to that. And then there's an actual very small percentage, an awakened percentage of critical thinkers. And they're a problem. If you seek to like take over a civilization and execute all these nefarious plans, well, then you'd better figure out what to do about the critical thinkers, or as I like to call them, the conspiracy theorists. Why don't you create a bunch of problems for them to be about for years, and then finally, when it's ready to crack your plan open, give them what they want. Give them representation. Tell them don't worry, we're going to take, I know that we've been telling you they weren't spraying the skies, even though you were seeing it with your own eyes. I know we've been telling you that you're wrong and that you're crazy for years, decades and decades, right? But now, it's true, baby, they are spraying the skies, but don't worry, we're going to take care of it. We're going to stop spraying. Hey, I know we made fun of you for complaining about the fluoride in the water, but now it's 2025, baby, things are different. And the Avengers are here, we're going to get the fluoride out of the water. I think this is all to just get you to calm the hell down. And finally, because there's two things happening here. One, you got what you want. And number two, you're going to be too busy saying I told you so for you to lift your head up and look at what else is happening now, which I think is, it's going to be a lot more nefarious. So
here's another one, David. I mean, again, this is what just in RFK to investigate rising chronic disease, ultra processed food, check. Electromagnetic radiation, check. Childhood schedule, check. Glyphosate and pesticides, check. Artificial food additives, SSRIs, microplastic. I mean, just you name it. If you're a conspiracy theorist, they are feeding you, baby. Like Donald Trump flicking little flicking toilet paper at you, or what was it, paper towels?
But this is what it is. I mean, they're effectively quelling us. What they're doing is they're treating us like a third party, and they're giving us everything that we want. And I think we're going to come to this point where when the big deception happens, we're not going to see it coming because we're going to be too busy just counting, resting on our laurels and counting all the times we were right.
Or what the book of Revelation, it kind of hints that the first 3.5 years of this Antichrist reign are going to be tremendous, and people are going to,
nice.
Yeah, it's going to be a time of plenty, a golden age, like Chronos. Like, no, you will want for nothing. I think that we're headed towards something like that. Again, I don't want to make any predictions, but doesn't it feel that way?
Oh,
well, you don't have to make any predictions, Top. He's saying it. He's saying we're going towards a golden age,
Yeah.
Right.
And Helena Blavatsky and Alice Bailey predicted that in 2025 we were going into the golden age. So, yeah, I think you're safe to predict this one, Top. At least if you aren't, it wasn't your fault. You didn't say it first.
Yeah. I mean, if anything, what we're seeing too is like a whole typology psychological operation. I don't know if you guys follow me when I'm saying that, but meaning you've got the Antichrist and then you've got the false Christ, right? So the false Christ, false prophets come before the Antichrist, the man of sin, the son of perdition, because there's a falling away that happens before all of that takes place. And when you're comparing the office that we have in Washington, D.C. right now, they are coming off like they are these false Christs, right? Who are going to perform wonders and miracles and all this kinds of stuff. And I can see that maybe that's just a precursor stage of what's really going to maybe happen or take place. Because I do think that this alien disclosure stuff, this ascending masters, right? Alice Bailey, this whole concept of that there is something on its way here and it will be here and it will exalt, exploit, and it will have something to do with our human consciousness. It'll make us into a godhood, if that makes any sense.
Egg.
Right? Egg.
Egg.
It's just, let's go back to the garden, man. That's what's, the serpent said it all. Everything that happened in the garden is going to come back in the end.
Yeah.
You will have, you'll be like gods. And surely you shall not die. These things are going to happen. They're going to make it so that it does happen. And what do us humans, that don't have the Bible in our mind, that don't have that perspective on this reality, they fear death. They're going to be manipulated so much by this whole, hey, take this upgrade and you're going to live 100 years longer. I mean, dude, people are going to eat it up like candy.
Yeah.
Now, here's something crazy to think about, because it's 100% right. But the fact remains that no one knows the time. That's these entities as well. How many times have we been here? We're who says, I think Randall Carlson, we're a species with amnesia. This could have happened to us 5 times already. Who knows? Like, because they're constantly in preparation, and everything seems like we're going right. Like 2025 is the year that all this stuff is going to set into place, and they are setting into place. But is it another false start? And then they're like, didn't happen. Restart everything, and then boom. I don't know. Like, part of me is like, man, like when my mom is like, oh, it's the end times. I'm like, yeah, it's always been the end times. Like, is this specifically the worst, or is this just another iteration of humanity? We're at the end of something, but what? I don't know.
It makes you suspect that the real marker for whether or not it is the end times, it might be, can they pull it off?
No,
in other words, we're speculating as to whether or not they're trying to manufacture end times. And then the question becomes, if man made the issues, does it then qualify as end times prophecy fulfillment? If it does, then maybe the whole issue all along has been, do they have the technology in place to do it effectively?
Well, what if they're trying to like Operation Warp Speed God's plan? Because
That's what it feels like. Yeah.
it's like maybe if we do a little bit of accelerationism, we could, because there's going to be a final battle. It's like maybe we can catch him with his pants down. That's really the only chance you got. But I don't know, what if they've done this before? You know, you look at Gobekli Tepe, there's some kind of cataclysmic event, or you look at that Boneyard, Alaska dude that's sitting on that property where it's just like, I don't know, a mound of dead mammoths on top of each other. And he just continues to melt this permafrost and remove them, and they're still on top of each other. He's not saying also like what other kind of bones they're finding, because then that would become government property. So it's just mammoth tusk as far as we're concerned. Yeah, like I think he even said if we even found like an Indian arrowhead, the government has the right to come in here and just seize the land. But it's interesting. In 5 square acres, I have 10 acres out here. So in 5 square acres, these like hundreds of thousands of mammoths are buried on top of each other. No, something happened there. This was a burial site. This was a mass extinction site. This isn't the first time that we've been here. And it I don't know, it might be heretical of me to say, but it just seems like these entities, like they prepare themselves, they prepare this battle, and then they get to the end here, and then they look up and they go, this is it, right? And God's probably like, no. And then they're like, and then they restart, and God's just sitting there. He's like, I'm allowing you to do this. You've already been judged. You've been judged, and I'm allowing you to carry this out. How badly do you want to be? You already know what happens to you in the end. And this is another thing that, like, I guess if we were going to get like a spiritual or talking about stuff, people that blame God for all these calamities, all these horrible things that happen. And it's like, yeah, horrible things do happen. A lot of great things do happen too, but it's fair. It's very fair. He's seen what's happened here. He's asked us if this is what we want, and every single time human beings say yeah. And he goes, all right, play it out. Like he knows what's going to happen, but he allows us to play it out. He even allows these fallen angels to play out their role. He said, go ahead, do what you have to do, but you're going to be judged. I'm going to allow you to do this, and you're going to bury yourself. You're digging your own grave. Everybody here is bearing witness against you, but go ahead. And they do. And it's like, you could look at that and say, wow, that's a savage God. That's a horrible God. Or I look at it and I say, that's somebody who's very fair, extremely fair, to the point of like, I wouldn't even be that fair. I wouldn't let you get away with that much, but he does. It's kind of amazing.
Sometimes I wonder if this is something I haven't put a lot of thought in, and probably if I did, it would fall apart. But maybe these cycles are them getting really close to manufacturing, the return or something like that. And then maybe in some way they deviate so they can keep this going longer. They can keep reaping the benefits. They can keep controlling mankind. They can keep dominion over this planet. And then things get bad because that's always the direction they go. And maybe they dismount at the last second and falls apart. And then they just rebuild and they keep reaping the benefits and they keep themselves in control. I'd be open to that kind of an idea too. But I mean, it's just this time.
It's funny to do it on this realm, because in this realm, time is linear. But in God's realm, when they speak their plan to him, it already has unfolded. Like all of like when in the book of Revelation, when they describe all the stuff in the stars, they're describing the entire battle, but all at once. Like Ed Mabry would say, it's all layered on top of itself. Time is not working in a linear fashion. Time is it's already, they have done this thing. There's been the middle, there's been a judgment, and there's the end. So in a sense, they already have been judged, but they're just kind of screwing around or dicking around on this realm, right? For whatever reason. It's kind of
maybe they know about Ecclesiastes 1:9. We bring this verse up a lot. What has been done will be done again, and it's just this never-ending cycle.
Yeah.
And maybe these overlords, these guys that are trying to manufacture end times, know this process already, and it's already happened before. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think they have some sort of idea that there's judgment coming. Maybe
I think they know.
Yeah. I mean, why else would, in Revelation it says that they were, hiding into the mountains. They were going into the caves, and telling the rocks to hide us from the great and terrible day of the Lord. I mean, I think that they have a sense that they're worshiping not the real God. Well, they're worshiping who they believe is their God, but they know that I don't know. Like, they know that they're not going to survive this without doing some sort of work to do it. And I think that's why there were Nephilim. I think that's why the Nephilim were also, creating other Nephilim as far as, hybrid cryptid beings that would possibly survive the flood. Maybe they had an idea that the flood was coming. They didn't know when exactly, but they knew about it. It's kind of like what Top was saying about the whole timeline of things. They have a sense of it, but they just don't know,
Exactly.
God's plan fully.
Well, the same thing with Jesus Christ. They knew that they were aware of the prophecy of his coming. They didn't know how he was going to come. They also didn't know what exactly he was there to do. They thought when they see him, they go, "Have you come to kill me or banish me before the time has come?"
Right.
And they're like, "Oh, you don't know the plan," and that's why they killed him, because they didn't understand the plan of redemption for humanity. They again fell like headlong into this trap. You step on the rake, constantly step on the rake. So even though like human history or the history of the world is written, it's just strife with our suffering at the hands of these beings. They're consistently stepping on this rake and headed toward their own demise, which is like it's hilarious enough in its own. Like if I were ever to be face to face with one of these entities, it's almost like, why? I don't even know why you'd even want to talk with me. Because like that's where my mind's at. My mind is at, it's like, you already know what goes on here, and you've fallen for this trap so many times. Like, you want to come to my house, you want to alien abduct me, you want to, I don't know, knock off of my tables. It's like, this is all kind of fake and gay. Just like, you know what goes down. Just stop the shit already. Let's get to the point.
Okay.
I kind of suspect, though, that we might be at something. I've always felt like that. Even as a child, I had this like feeling that, I don't know, I didn't understand the Bible at all as a child. I had no, Christian reference point or anything. I felt like I was going to live to see the end of the world. That's just how I've always been ever since I was a kid, probably to a detriment. Like, I'm sure if a doctor, they were like, there's something wrong with this kid. It's not good that he thinks this. But I look around at this Orphic Egg situation, and I know we're at kind of the tail end of things. I'm not going to diatribe for too long, but this egg symbolism has been emerging within our media and things like that. We get a lot of events that take place, right? Egg factory burns down, got to cull the birds because H1N1, so there's going to be an egg shortage. Egg prices are skyrocketing. Somebody stole $45,000 worth of eggs to the tune of 100,000 eggs. Who steals that much eggs? Didn't even make sense. When that keeps happening, I look at these things and I go, oh, this is communications.
That's interesting. Yeah, I didn't
these are
even
communications.
recognize that. Jake Barber with the egg, he summons the egg.
The egg thing never stops. So CEO of Enron just gifted Paris Hilton an egg. And there seems to be the injection of this idea of the Orphic Egg into the public awareness now. And I forget exactly how that came about, the stumbling upon the Orphic Egg. But when I found this symbol, basically the Orphic Egg is it's an egg surrounded by a serpent, right? So this combination of egg and serpent. And the idea is that it's part of various pagan mythos' creation story. The egg is born out of primordial chaotic waters, and it cracks open, and a series of things may take place depending on which mythology you're looking at. Either the egg cracks open, and that's a great one. That symbol right there, that is the Masonic rite of Memphis Maraim, I think it's called, or Miraim, and inside of it, so there you go. There's your chaotic primordial waters beneath, right? And then you have this serpent, obviously encapsulated around the outside. You have the stars on the top and the water on the bottom. This is like the firmament, right? The firmament is the top. The snake is partially making the firmament. Inside the egg, this is a classic representation of order out of chaos, which all of the mystery schools are seeking to do that.
There's that symbol again. See that one in the middle there? Is that the one that was written on the floor?
Yeah, it is. That's the same one. At least the geometry is. I don't know about that ohm symbol or whatever it is in the middle. But what's inside the egg is important because, like I said, the egg represents order out of chaos. And these are basically what the mystery schools think they're accomplishing. So your OTO, your Freemasons, right? They are teaching you these various sciences, these holy sciences, so that you may go forth and make order out of chaos. And so inside the egg, you had the Freemasonic square and compass, right? That's obvious as far as how do you create order in a situation. There is a gavel, representative of the judicial system. That's another aspect of order. There's Jacob's ladder. Each tier represents a different level of enlightenment. That's another order out of chaos thing. All of the symbols in there are basically like, hey, what's inside the egg is how you make order out of the chaos. And the egg literally is birthed out of the primordial chaotic waters. And so you'll find this in the Vedics, you'll find this in the Greeks, you'll find this in the Egyptian pantheon. They all have some sort of, and it varies a little bit. Sometimes the egg just cracks open. The top is the firmament, the bottom is this realm. Sometimes a deity comes out and then it creates the realm. Sometimes a deity comes out, it gives birth to other deities. One of those deities creates the realm, but either way, it is part of their creation mythos. So this thing starts popping up again and again, and then all of a sudden it ends up getting tied into this Donald Trump appearance at the Super Bowl. And the way that happens is there is all these egg comms, and I'm trying to find the connection between the egg and Donald Trump, because I just intuit that there is one. And it turns out that Donald Trump's going to be the first sitting president at a Super Bowl. But the Super Bowl location is in New Orleans at Caesars Superdome. And if you look up Caesar and the egg, you will find a passage about Brutus talking about the serpent's egg. And Brutus is basically saying that there is a good cause for potentially killing Caesar before he rises to power, the same way that you would kill an egg, a serpent in the egg before it is hatched and then becomes this mischievous creature. So right there, I'm like, that's insane, right? And then you find out that the first Caesar also ushered in what would have been called a golden age. So the connections there are like way too strong. And of course, if you look at the Caesar's Superdome from an aerial POV, it looks like a giant egg. So I then jump to conclusions, and I'm like, maybe they're going to bomb this. They might bomb this. I don't know. They might bomb it. They might try to kill Trump. I'm just trying to sensationalize it a little bit so that people will come to the table and have this conversation, because this egg symbolism is everywhere. And I think I realized what it really was. And that is, it was a big ceremony. Caesar's Superdome was the egg. And inside, during the halftime celebration, and of course all throughout the game, you're inundated with Freemasonic symbolism. You're inundated with ceremony, right? They're standing like they do in rituals in the OTO or in the Freemasons. They're going through, the color schemes are all part of it too, right? There's a divine feminine thing with this chick. She's singing a song. She's in an inverted triangle. And I realized all it really was is a big ceremony. I do think we're at a pivotal moment. And I think that the nature of this egg has to do with UAP disclosure, because recently they started retrieving eggs. Remember the egg video that came out? It was like a huge deal. That was the big conjoining tissue there. I was like, there's something going on with this egg. What's that? Oh, IVF, right.
Yeah, dude.
Egg retrieval, baby.
So, but check this out. So
It's fucked up, right?
it is. It's all ridiculous. So basically what happens...
I hate the egg. I hate the
I
egg.
love it, dude. I love it. It's so fun. It's the gift that keeps on giving. It popped up again. Top showed me something, and I was like, this is about the egg. And he's like, please stop talking to me. So it's the same thing. It's a big ceremony and I think they're like harvesting energy to get done whatever it is they want to get done. But the Superdome is the egg. And what's inside the egg? All of the symbols that you can create order out of chaos. So what do? They throw a big Masonic halftime show. They show you all the symbols. They show you all the rituals. It's the same exact thing. It's just the theatrical version of a very ancient and important symbol. And I'll dismount here. The connection to the UAPs that is very troublesome is that I think they're going to be... There was a second egg retrieval video that was disseminated on 4chan by a whistleblower at the same time that the other one hit the media. And he also found a entity alongside the egg. This entity was allegedly a tall, white Nordic, right? One of the alien species, who basically told us a lot of shit. But he said the Greys created us, right? And they created us as a slave race. Where did we hear that before? Anunnaki, right? And that the tall Nords intervened on our behalf. So the Greys upgraded us from early hominid monkey kind of creatures. And then the tall Nords upgraded us even further. So they're not our creators. They've come to liberate us from our creators. But that is the big lie that we're getting ready to be sold, because what's really clear is there's a UFO disclosure on the horizon. It's been on the horizon for 15 years or something like that. But now we had the second ever congressional hearing on UAPs, like right around the New Year's. They're picking up the pace. They're doing this thing. And I think that ultimately we're going to see the culmination of a bunch of events. Is it going to be like Donald Trump being the Antichrist, the world turning on it? We go through a big calamity. He ushers in a golden age. Also, UFOs expose themselves, and they tell us that, you know, they're here to keep us from destroying ourselves in mutually assured nuclear war, or, you know, mutually assured nuclear destruction. They're also here to stop us from destroying our planet. They also are here to liberate us from our creators.
Well, they're here as the saviors, right?
Yes, they're here as the saviors. Correct. Right, so that is a really weird web to untangle with this egg thing and the UFO thing and the Caesar Dome thing. But it doesn't change the fact that it's all there. And for whatever reason, they keep hitting us with eggs. And we just pulled an egg with a helicopter out of a mountainscape. And it was called UAP Disclosure. Like, what? What are you talking about? And nobody's looking at this thing. I'm the only psychopath that's obsessed with eggs. Top doesn't want to hear about it. Every show that you guys will never have us back on, because for the last 20 minutes I talked about eggs. I don't know who to tell. And I'm having a bit of a crisis, really, because no one will listen. So please, to your audience, if you're hearing this, it's all about the egg, baby. It's all in the egg. By the way, Lamb, that was his parting words to Aleister Crowley. Lamb's parting words to Aleister Crowley were, it's all in the egg.
Okay.
No way.
That is
really
incredible.
I don't know what's going on.
Wow. But something is going on with the egg. There's something
with
to
the egg, baby. It's all about the egg.
Oh my goodness. Well, look, I got one more egg thing before we egg out of here.
Oh, please. He's got more egg things, please.
The whole thing, the whole concept, what we were just talking about, right? Out of chaos comes order. Right. And it just resembles the phoenix. Mm-hmm. Phoenix resembling rebirth. Rebirth resembling the mural inside of the United Nations that no one talks about. So if you could try and look up a picture of that real quick, just type in United Nations mural. It'll probably pop up. I think there's an egg in there, man.
Oh, son of a
I don't know.
Let's go. Show me the egg.
I don't know.
Apparently, by the way, this egg also has to do with a ritual called Osiris Rising, where like allegedly every 4 years they try to resurrect the spirit of Osiris, who is Nimrod, who is Gilgamesh. Nimrod being the first emperor of Babylon, who built the tower, who tried to permeate the heavenly realms, who got the smackdown. It's an egg. There it is, guys.
Egg. It looks like
it's an egg.
I don't know.
So who's that in the middle?
So what I see there in the middle is a union. So there's that's how that's how I transcribe that symbolism there, is that with this rebirth process, with the phoenix dying with his dead skin right there on the table, you've got the whole United Council there, giving their power unto the beast. And you have a union between the beast and man. And so I don't know. And it looks like everyone's looking up to him, and everyone's, it's definitely a godlike figure.
And that's the idea too, is that the Antichrist has to die and then is brought back, right?
Yes.
So there's a resurrection aspect, and I could see like the phoenix it dies and it's rebirthed from the ashes, but it's the same thing. You can see in your mind this loop, right, of like a bird that hatches that gives birth to an egg, and that bird dies, and the egg hatches open, and the bird comes out, and it gives birth to an egg, and the cycle continues. It is like resurrection.
Look at the
I would say this.
one.
I would say this is that Christ resurrected, but the inverted counterfeit.
Yes, because that's what it is. It's an inverted counterfeit. Yes,
and that's what Satan can only come up with. He can't resurrect because you don't have that power.
Guys, look at the shining one in the tree giving the fruit to the female on the floor there, and the male on the other side, and then this creating some kind of like earthly union. It's weird.
Yeah,
man.
Yeah.
Weird.
I saw that. Yeah, because I was like, those look like Adam and Eve characters in the background. She's receiving the fruit from the tree. There's something there. Yeah, and I like what you just said there.
Oh, that thing looks like a cupid, and a cupid is a cherubim, and Satan was a cherubim. Oh my gosh. Okay. All right. I'm done with this.
What you said there about what the hell was it? Oh, Satan can't resurrect, right? He can't resurrect. He can't do that. But these entities, these fallen angels, they will invert God's creation, God's laws. And so I've been going back and forth because I think there's something about reincarnation that seems to be significant, Only in that I'm not going to dismiss the stories of all these people who have gone through these things and have these memories, right? So what then do you do with it? And one time I was the recipient of an anecdotal story that I read on my show, somebody who allegedly had a parasitic relationship with an entity. This thing got to loose its energy or his energy off of him. In exchange, it would answer some questions and such for him. And so one of the things it told him was that reincarnation and karma are a real thing, but they were not created by God, that the angels created reincarnation and karma, but the system, since it's not created by God, is imperfect. And therefore, by now, it is all up. It's all backed up. It's all screwed up. Everything's doesn't make sense. Everything is backlogged. There's a lot of spirit waiting to inhabit flesh that's all, jacked up. And so to me, I always went, well, sure, it could lie to him, but that's a very particular lie, and this guy could be lying to me, but that's a very particular thing that I've just heard. And we know that they invert. And so in that way, that does resonate with me. To me, that makes sense in my mind. Like, of course he would try. The resurrection was the miracle. It was the nail in the coffin for them. And of course they would try and they would clamor to recreate that in some way, shape, or form. And reincarnation seems like a bastardization of that.
Yeah, man. Well, I think we've reached a stopping point here.
Please, or else I'll talk about more eggs.
This was awesome, guys. Thank you so much for coming on. Yeah, man, we were just passing the ball around this episode, and it was awesome. First time, but not the last time that we will have you guys on the show.
Absolutely.
And I'm sure Top's going to be having all kinds of current events that he's gonna, be throwing at me here in the future, and I would be like, dude, we need to schedule. We didn't
even talk about. I wanted to talk about the latest episode of Tinfoil Hat with
Oh, you told me about that. I haven't listened to that either. Whatever was happening there, Top's like, I don't like this guy.
I think I listened to it. Which one was this?
You gotta tell me a little bit about it now.
This guy Mark Passio. He was an ex Satanist. He says.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, it's a master display on. I have the picture here.
It's in my paranormal guy.
No, he's not. No, that was a previous episode. This one came out this morning. This guy here, it's just a master display on the overlap of libertarianism, anarchism, and Satanism. I put a little tweet out here to see if I can get some bait. Maybe he'll bite. But
all I saw was, if you want to understand how gay and dumb, that's all I saw.
How gay, dumb, and alike anarchism, libertarianism, and Satanism are, then check out this episode with this guy tagged.
That is awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah, he goes on to, everyone else besides him is stupid. And there's always like these tinges of truth. All religion is stupid. All religion is fake, but he was a Satanist, and he kind of speaks highly of like the structure of the Satanic Church, and he's also a LaVeyan Satanist, which is directly under Anton LaVey. He goes out of his way to deny any kind of entities that may be pervasive in the church, in the Satanic Church.
Yeah, he's probably a fallen angel.
Yeah,
he's probably got like green or blue blood or something.
He's probably
like,
possessed.
Oh, but we don't really do any of that stuff. It was like, no. I know what you guys do. This is all supernatural. You're summoning things. That part you're hiding, and then kind of to go. Then he hides behind. Well, I'm no longer a Satanist, but I'm all about individual liberty, and basically says, do what thou wilt. And I'm like, so just like libertarianism, anarchism. Yeah. I'm like, man. Mm-hmm. I would love to talk with this guy because I don't like to debate.
No, but it's like basically it's that live and let live from libertarianism. Like it sounds good on the surface, but what does it yield? It's like, how can you live and let live if the chick next to me is doing her and her coven are in the basement, putting a hex on my house every Friday. You know what I mean? Like there's
Crowley talk.
Yeah. It's and then of course, what's their logo? It's the torch, right? Promethean, Lucifer, the light bearer, the morning star. Don't tread on me, even though God gave us the authority to tread on serpents and scorpions, right? It's all like there's something there that's very wrong.
Yes, exactly.
He brings up objective morality, and then he talks about the 7 deadly sins. He attributes that to the Bible, which is not. It comes from some pope. But I generally don't even really disagree with these being sins. These are missing the mark. And he's like, well, is thinking about really a sin? Is it more the action? And then he goes on about, don't what is the libertarian phrase? Don't steal my don't whatever, just as long as you do it on your end. And I'm just like, I hope nobody believes this, and I'm going to rebut it strongly in some way, because we were at the
Please do.
time. Yeah. We're here at the time, and this guy apparently is a big name in this field. But you, it's my time.
Right, dude. Let's go.
I'm tired of listening to
Get 'em.
this. I'm tired of listening to people spout anarchist and libertarian ideology. I think it has some good points, but largely it's Satanism.
Well, last time I checked, dude, the whole live and let live was the prerequisite to exactly how we got to the cultural decay that we're at
exactly
right
how
now.
I got right here.
Yep.
Now is the time for the iron rod.
Oh yeah,
Just saying.
that's it, man. Lay it down. I mean, really, it just leads to like not having any accountability for your actions.
Exactly.
And then that leads to you being your own God.
And
It's
let me
like,
tell you
okay,
something.
well-
Live and let live only works if there's no spiritual realm. Because I can do just fine not stepping on your property and not destroying your stuff if I'm spending all my time in my basement pitting spirits against you.
Yeah.
Right. So, all right. So before we end here real quick, I just got to disclose this information. We're on Riverside. Don't leave the show yet. I'm going to stop the recording. And I forgot to tell you guys that before, but
Okay.
yeah, just don't leave. But if you don't mind, just letting our audience know where they can find you. And if there's any last message you want to give to them, go ahead.
You can find me and Nephilim Death Squad anywhere you find your podcast. And if you want to find me on an individual basis, then Twitter is going to be your place. Find me at David L. Corbo. And as far as last words, we talked about not being blackpilled. And I think this is the message that I hope to get out among all the crap that I sputter. I mean, the egg is very important. But otherwise, you should be first and foremost working to strengthen your relationship with God and zero that in. Don't just say, like, God's the universe or some amorphous God. I'm talking the Father that Jesus Christ references, because you can venerate these spirits. You can give them worship. If you're not direct about who you're talking to, something else is that recipient of that veneration and worship. So zero it in and walk with God, talk with God, strengthen your relationship, and things are going to work a lot better for you. They have for me.
Well said. Yeah, you could find me at toplobster.com if you want to buy t-shirts, stuff like that. Tower Gang, if you're into the first 15 minutes of this show, I'll be doing that tonight or Wednesdays at 9/11. Nephilim Death Squad is obviously where we talk more about what we spoke about for the length of this show. Spiritual things that actually make sense. And you could also check me, David, and Clint Russell out on Dangerous Real Talk, Real Dudes, or Dangerous Retards, whatever you want to call it, RTRD''S. We're on all the podcatchers, YouTube, Odyssey, Rumble, wherever. And we'll be releasing a new episode soon. We're talking about, it's just current events, and we come at it from, I am the conspiracy theorist / political guy. David is the unhinged conspiracy guy that can't stop talking about eggs. And Clint is actually a very powerful political commentator. He's debated Kash Patel. He's debated Vivek Ramaswamy. He's been on Dave Smith's show multiple times and Timcast, and the guy's a heavy hitter. He's doing a show with us, so go check it out. It always has, like, we've done it 3 times already, and it has pretty good reviews. People are talking about it because there's good points of views there, and everyone there, I think, makes some coherent points. So that's our new venture, Dangerous Retards. Go check it out. Nice.
Awesome, guys. Well, thank you again for coming on the show. Before we do go our separate ways, I'm just going to say a little prayer for us, and we'll close it out. So, Heavenly Father, we thank you for giving us the ability to come together through being on different parts of the country, and giving us good internet connection today. Just pray that you be with us and use us for your work, and to just continue to expose the lies, expose the darkness, shine the light through us. And we pray these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
All right. Thank you, guys. And be safe. Be in good health.
Thank you.
And we'll see you in the future.
Later, guys.
All right, guys. All right. Nephilim Death Squad debrief. Wow.
Yeah,
Loved
man.
that one. That was a good one. Man,
Those
that
guys-
one, we were all just speaking from the heart there, dude. All of us.
Those guys go ham, bro.
They go ham.
Guys go ham.
They go ham. I love their personalities. They're such a good mix.
Straight out of the gate, dude. Just
Oh yeah,
getting
well,
at it.
it just it felt like I was at work, just sitting down at the table talking with a bunch of firemen. To be honest with you,
Right.
no filter, right? So, but man, everything we talked about, folks, man, it's the truth. It's the truth. There's a bunch of weird connections here. There's a bunch of weird things going on. Shout out to Nephilim Death Squad. Thank you guys for coming on. Deeply appreciate you guys giving us your time and, just having a blowout of a conversation. And go check their stuff out. They've got a Patreon. They've got all kinds of social medias out there and outlets that they get their content through. But those links will be down in the description below. Be sure to give them show them some love. So, but man, there was a lot of content in that episode. I loved it.
Rabbit hole, dude. Absolute rabbit hole.
Oh, rabbit hole after rabbit hole after rabbit hole. I mean, it was a steamrolling engine. Wasn't the little engine that could. It was the freight train.
Now, those dudes got some ammo, dude. They got magazines on magazines.
They do. They're involved, man. They're involved.
Not literally, sorry.
And we're trying to be involved, and we're a new show, but we're coming in and we're mingling in, and we're a part of the party now. And it's just a lot of fun getting into this community of the talk that we bring up. Bringing the Bible into the perspective of all of these things, and really just making these connections, these conspiratorial connections. I don't even use the word conspiracy theorists anymore. I think it's trash, man. I think it's people just get the wrong idea when you do say the theorists at the end of it.
The trigger word now,
It's a trigger word, man.
Trigger word.
Yeah, and people are turned off by it. But there are connections. There's symbolism going on. There's the breaking down of the unknown language of symbolism, and these red lines connecting to this photo. This photo's that red line's connecting to this one, and it's super important to navigate those things, to bring those ideas up, because you see the true context of what's really going on. Because I think one of the biggest things we talked about in this episode was the whole psychology that's going, the psychological operations that are taking place. And people are so demoralized in our culture today and our society that the assessment of what's true and what's not true, you don't know anymore. I think it's kind of like a pathological liar. They just keep telling you things, but they're selling you the story. Yeah. There's a lot of things being sold in our world today. And again, it all goes back to the Nephilim. It all goes back to fallen angels. It all goes back to this narrative, bro, that's against God, and that's against Jesus Christ, and against the narrative that God had intended for us. But it was not only interrupted, it was twisted, it was mangled. There was an attempt to destroy it. But God's stronger than all of that. God's using us. He's using the Nephilim Death Squad, and he's gonna shine that light through us, and we're just gonna keep doing what we do. And deep appreciation to those guys. That was one of the best episodes we have done yet. Was a great opportunity. Folks, go ahead, check their stuff out, and show them some love. But man, can't wait for the next one.
Yeah,
can't wait for the next one.
Curious what the next current events will be.
I know. Top Ops is on it, bro. He's bringing up the fact with the IVF. Yeah. There's a lot of things with that. We've had on Craig Hunt, which we're going to have him on the future too. Again, check out episode 10. That's the latest one that we did with Craig. He makes a lot of connections with the Anunnaki and the Bible, and the fact that that's the false narrative. That's the fallen angel. Again, this is a battle for who wants to be God in this reality. And we know what the truth is. We know who the real God is. And unfortunately, the odds are against us, especially like the community that we're in and that we're growing. There's a lot of censorship to the things that we're talking about, but there's not the censorship that are of the blasphemous things that are out there, and these agents that are just promoting disinformation and really like misinformation. I mean, it's terrible, especially in an informational age. It's a war. We're fighting a war, dude. It's a war.
Info wars,
right? So
every time I hear that, Good old Alex
Yeah.
Jones.
Yeah. But I mean, Alex Jones. Yeah. Might have to bleep that name out of YouTube, right? But thank you folks for being here. If you've been here this long, we deeply appreciate you. Lots of love for us to you. And if you haven't done so already and you want to support our channel, hit that subscribe button, like the show, share it with your friends. Also, we encourage comments. We want to conversate with you guys through the comments and hear your perspectives and your points of view on the topics that we did talk about. And, if you don't want to go through the whole episode, just check in the description. You'll see all the talking points that we had in there and go through the chapters as well. But we want to hear from you. And another way to support us on our platform, you can check us out on Spotify and Apple, pretty much anywhere you can listen to podcast apps or podcasts in general. You can find us there, The Biblical Hitman. Follow us, leave us a 5-star review. But other than that, we love you. Take care. Be safe. See you next time.
See you.